What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto wasn't loved by Kushina and found power through eternal hatred? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments, and also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. It's funny, it really is, how the world can change forever with the simplest of choices. How something as simple as taking a different path home, talking to someone new, or saying one line too many can change everything. It's funny, it really is, because if you don't laugh, what can you do? The Biju, the tailed demon beasts, walking localized apocalypses, unfathomably powerful constructs of chakra. They were as titans to ants when compared to the humans. But humans are clever. What they cannot overcome with strength, they will fight with cunning. And eventually human cunning allowed for a respite against the Biju. Each Biju was sealed into a ninja from a different shinobi village. These ninja were called Jinchuriki. While the monstrous power of the tailed beast was neutralized by being sealed within the ninja, the immense power of the Biju could not be completely cut off from the world. Each Jinchuriki was granted great and unique powers from their tenant sealed within. They stood far above their fellow ninja in terms of power, titans among men. But carrying such a power was not an easy task, nor was it one that was wanted by many. For even though the Biju was sealed away, their power and malice were not so easily dismissed. The life of a Jinchuriki was a lonely one, for many feared that the beast within the Jinchuriki could influence the jailer. These fears were not unfounded. Sealing was simultaneously an art form and also an infinitely complex language. Sometimes the teams of ninja that sealed the beast underestimated the power of the Biju, and soon, the Biju would attempt to break free. Such fears were held by many in the ninja villages. The ninja village of Konoha had come under attack by the most powerful of the Bijus, the nine-tailed demon fox, the Kyuubi. In the space of a half hour, over half of the entire city was destroyed by the rampaging monster. When all hope seemed lost, the fourth Hokage, the village's beloved leader, strode onto the battlefield. On that day, Minato Namikaze stood against the impending utter annihilation, and denied it. No one is completely sure of what happened between Minato and the Kyuubi. But when the dust was settled, the Kyuubi was defeated. Minato had sealed the Biju, single-handedly, into a newborn baby. Sadly, the strain of fighting such a monster was too much for even the famed Yellow Flash. As he died, he was at peace, trusting in the third Hokage and his beloved village of Konoha. Unfortunately, his trust was grossly misplaced. Scarcely after an hour after the last of the dust had settled, the young baby, named Naruto, was almost assassinated, his caretakers saving the baby by only the slimmest of margins. It was then that Hiruzen Sarutobi, the newly reinstated third Hokage, made his first meaningful act as Hokage. He ordered that all talk of Naruto's Jinchuriki status was to be banned, under the pain of death, fearing for the life of the baby. Baby Naruto was sent to the orphanage, along with the other orphans caused by the Kyuubi's rampage, and was given the last name of Uzumaki. But Hiruzen underestimated the darker side of human emotion. As time went on, the rumors of what had happened that night, concerning young Naruto, slowly spread. And the pain of those who suffered under the demon fox's rage began to change into hate. Soon, ironically, it became widespread belief in the village that young Naruto himself was the reincarnated powerless Kyuubi. And like all hateful people, they began lashing out at the object of their hate. After a mob was stopped by the Hokage's personal guard, the village got smart. They began a carefully orchestrated plan that would deprive young Naruto of any friends or education. They also began to find ways to find the Jinchuriki alone, and there they would extract their vengeance. It has been over 9 years since that fateful night. Naruto Uzumaki grinned happily to himself as he prepared for the day. Today was practical physical day. Naruto loved these days. He wasn't very good at theory or testing, but he was quite good at the physical aspects of the shinobi world. His extremely high stamina, increased healing rate, and his unstoppable determination led him to easily dominate any physical challenge. Minus, of course, sparring matches. Those seemed to always have rules that prevented him from winning often. Nevertheless, today was going to be a good day. Naruto opened the door to his classroom at the Ninja Academy. As he entered, his sky-blue eyes swept the classroom, looking for a seat. Abruptly he was spun around and knocked to the ground as two girls, Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno, sped past him in an effort to reach the seat located next to their true love, Sasuke Uchiha. Ino's blonde hair whipped about her head as she shoved Sakura away at the last second, claiming the spot next to Sasuke with an exuberant cry of victory, much to Sakura's loud proclamations of dismay. Naruto was unaware of any of this, however. He instead succumbed into unconsciousness as his head had slammed into the metal door frame when he was knocked down. A slow trickle of blood leaked from his newest head wound as he lay there, his normally active body unmoving. Mizuki had been prepared to have a terrible day. Not only would he have to put up with a bunch of little brats running and screaming about, he had to also watch the demon child enjoy itself. His day, however, suddenly became considerably better when he was about to enter the classroom he was supposed to teach in. The little demon fox was lying on his back, blood slowly pooling around the child's head. The stupid little shit probably slipped and hurt itself. Mizuki the thought was highly amusing. It was unfortunate, but Mizuki knew that such an injury wouldn't keep the demon spawn down for long. It was in that instant Mizuki had a stroke of genius. He knew exactly how to ruin the demon's day. Letting out a slight groan as he sat up, Naruto couldn't help but wonder, I wonder why my head hurts. Slowly rubbing the back of his head as he sat up, the headache disappearing as he did so. The blonde blinked when he looked at the hand that had been rubbing the back of his head. It was covered in blood. I wonder why I was bleeding. It was an idle thought, I don't remember getting hit this time. Tapping his chin in thought, the blonde's eyes widened as he remembered that he couldn't walk around covered in blood. Unzipping the zipper on his orange jacket, the Uzumaki shoved his hands into his jacket and wiped the blood off of his hands the best he could on his dirty white undershirt he wore under the jacket. Rubbing at his hair and neck, he cleaned off the blood the best he could, cleaning off his hands once more. Tilting his hands up to the light, Naruto nodded to himself in satisfaction. I've cleaned most of the blood off. Zipping his jacket back up, the blonde pushed himself off of the ground and stood. I don't want to be late to class, not when I'm so close to being on time. Seeing the demon stand up, Mizuki carefully manufactured a look of great concern before he called Naruto over to his desk. This is going to be great, Mizuki gleefully considered, being careful to keep any emotion aside from the mask of manufactured care off his face. Naruto made his way over to Mizuki-sensei's desk. I wonder what I have done wrong now. I didn't do anything but get knocked down. Mizuki looked over at Naruto as the Uzumaki stepped up to his desk. Naruto, I saw that you slipped and fell trying to walk through the door. Mizuki made no effort to lower his voice, nor did he attempt to stop the class from laughing at Naruto's perceived clumsiness as he continued, and with such an injury I cannot, in good conscience, allow you to participate in today's events. Mizuki paused, inwardly savoring the moment before continuing. Why don't you go to your parents and have them get you checked out by a medic nin? I'm sure they would care enough about you to help you out. The look of shocked pain and sadness in the little shit's eyes made Mizuki's week. Hell, it practically made his month. As Naruto opened his mouth to protest, Mizuki let some of his anger at the fox bleed into his voice as he reprimanded Naruto. You're not going to defy the orders of a teacher, are you? That's grounds for expulsion, you know. Mizuki watched Naruto's countenance fall as he whispered out an apology and quickly left the class with slumped shoulders. Mizuki could barely withhold the utter glee from appearing on his face as he watched the demon fox leave his classroom, not noticing that the events had drawn the attention of two students. Sakura felt slightly confused. She didn't like Naruto in the slightest. He was loud, annoying, untalented, and rather stupid. But, somehow, when he left, it felt like the room was just not as bright as before. After a moment of contemplation, she shook her head, her pink hair swaying from side to side as she did so. Why should she care about that loser? With those encouraging thoughts in mind, she turned back around to continue arguing with Ino about the seating arrangement. Hinata Hyuga also watched Naruto leave the class. However, unlike her other classmates, she watched Naruto with a sinking feeling of dismay. There was something just so wrong with Naruto's countenance being dull and quiet. It just didn't fit with her view of the sunny-haired eternally happy blonde she watched from afar. The Hyuga's eyes cut to Mizuki-sensei, and she felt that something was off. That he somehow had made Naruto sad. And if that was the case, Hinata felt a very uncharacteristic surge of anger towards her sensei. A small portion of the quiet and gentle girl felt horror at the darker turn of her thoughts, but most of her wondered how hard it would be to turn off her teacher's tenketsu or his chakra pathways. Naruto sniffled to himself as he left the academy, his teacher's unintentionally hurtful words echoing in his mind. With a deep shuddering breath, Naruto shoved all the pain and hurt he felt deep inside. After all, if they never knew what hurt you, they wouldn't try the things that really hurt. So I can't train today at the academy, huh? Naruto's eyes narrowed in defiance. Then I'll just train myself. I'll show them. I'll train myself to be the best ninja ever. The Uzumaki finished his thoughts with an exultant fist pump, excitedly running off to grab his kunai and shuriken, not realizing that his mask of unending happiness was unconsciously slipping back into place. The Kyuubi grinned to itself at its container's thoughts. Its jailer, while rather stupid, had enough determination to rival even the strongest ninja. Granted, it didn't matter as much since determination alone wouldn't get the brat far in life, but it was a good thing to have nonetheless. For the longest time, many years ago, the Kyuubi was sealed within a different jailer. His jailer at that time was named Mito Uzumaki. The seal had kept the Kyuubi trapped in an endless white plain, the fox itself chained to a floating rock. Eventually Mito grew too old to continue housing the Nine Tails. Kushina Uzumaki, another member of Mito's clan, was chosen to house the beast. After the Kyuubi was transferred to Kushina, she would often visit it in the endless white plain to talk about her life and the world around her, unintentionally becoming the Biju's only window into the outside world. Then, abruptly, the Kyuubi was released and then resealed into Naruto in short order. But Naruto's seal was different. Unlike all of the previous seals, Naruto's seal allowed the Kyuubi's potent chakra to constantly leak, in a very minuscule trickle, into its container. It also allowed the Kyuubi to experience the world through Naruto's eyes. And for the first time, it saw the darker side of humanity. The side that hated, feared, and loathed a small boy, who had no idea what he had ever done to receive such hate. All the Kyuubi could do was heal its little container once the beatings were over. And the Kyuubi began to hate. As the years and beatings grew, it began to hate more. One day, the Kyuubi promised itself, this village would pay. All of them. The demon fox eyed the newest crack in his container's mindscape. It wouldn't be long now until Naruto breaks. Then they would all pay. It paused, considering. No, not all of them. The two at the ramen stand had helped its container. They get to live. Humming happily to herself, Sakura skipped down the path towards home, the academy having let out for the day. Normally she would have walked through town, but today she had decided to walk the more scenic route. Her happy thoughts about beloved Sasuke-kun were abruptly and irrevocably shattered when a kunai whizzed by her head. Shocked and slightly frightened, she jerked back, instinctively dropping to the ground and covering her head with her arms. When no further attack sounded out, she hesitantly looked in the direction that the kunai had come from. Her fear quickly turned to anger as she saw Naruto staring at his raised hand in confusion. Why did the kunai fly backwards? Naruto wondered in befuddlement as he stared at his hand. His wonderings were abruptly shattered when Sakura's fist crashed down on his head. Baka, what were you thinking? Sakura practically screamed as she shook her fist in Naruto's face. You almost hit me. I was just trying to learn how to throw kunai. Naruto explained as calmly as he could while holding onto his temporarily hurting head. I didn't mean to throw it at you. What about the pictures in our textbook, Baka? Why didn't you look at those? Sakura shot back, annoyance at Naruto's lack of proper studying habits as well as his general stupidity bubbling up in her chest. You can't be that stupid. What pictures? Naruto asked rather stupidly in Sakura's opinion. Sakura, spying Naruto's textbook laying on the ground, unopened, stormed over to it and began flipping towards the kunai section, preparing to show the Baka exactly what she was talking about. Sakura opened the correct page with an angered flick of her thumb. See Baka, the pictures are right. Here? Sakura's voice trailed off as she looked down at the page and saw no pictures or diagrams of how to throw a kunai. She wasn't even sure there was any useful information on the page at all. That can't be right. Sakura mumbled to herself as she double-checked the page number from the reference page. Sakura set Naruto's textbook down and pulled out her own textbook. Flipping to the kunai section, she was greeted by numerous pictures and diagrams. She cast her gaze towards Naruto's textbook. They had the same page number. What was going on? I just don't understand. Naruto's hesitant voice brought her out of her confused thoughts. Could I look at the pictures real quick? Naruto shyly inquired, fully expecting to be turned down. Sakura blinked before shrugging. It couldn't hurt, could it? She held the book up for Naruto to look at. Naruto slowly looked at each picture, a look of intense concentration on his face. Suddenly a look of complete comprehension passed over his face and he abruptly walked over to pick up one of his discarded rusted kunai. Sakura, in spite of herself, was slightly curious of what could make Naruto of all people think he understood something. Naruto's hand snapped forward. He stared at the target. Sakura stared at the target. Naruto had hit the inner ring of the target. Maybe it was just a fluke? She questioned. Naruto nodded, knowing that he wasn't this good normally. He then picked up another kunai and flicked it towards the target. Hit. He threw another and another. Again, the kunai struck the target. One by one he threw every kunai he owned, and each time he hit the target. This is amazing. Naruto turned Sakura and happily thanked her. Thanks for letting me look at your book, Sakura-chan. It helped me out a bunch. Sakura felt her cheeks warm slightly as she tried to wave off Naruto's gratitude. It's all right. It wasn't a big deal. A sudden thought occurred to her. She took a deep breath before hesitantly voicing it. I'll show you my books each day if you promise to always show up to class and don't be loud. Naruto gave Sakura his extremely rare true smiles as he nodded, odd that someone would help him. For Sakura, Naruto's smile was so bright and joyful that the sun itself seemed dull in comparison. Naruto stuck out his hand to Sakura. As she shook it, Naruto, remembering what Sakura-chan said about being loud, stated firmly, I'll be there every day for class. And I'll be much quieter. It's a promise of a lifetime. And so the world is forever changed. Iruka Amino let out a relieved sigh as the door closed behind the last of his students for the day. The last 2 years had been interesting. Since the Naruto's abrupt change in class behavior 2 years ago, many other changes had been catalyzed. It had started out to affect only a select few, but had quickly spread out to affect all of the students of his class. The first was Sakura Haruno. She had somehow befriended Naruto. Sakura found a drive to be the top kunoichi of her class. She quickly rose through the rankings until she reached the coveted position. One would think that Sakura could potentially slack off at this point, but Hinata Hyuga was always directly behind her in terms of rankings, ensuring that Sakura could not slack off, lest she lose the coveted top position. And speaking of Hinata, she had undergone a character change of sorts. She was mostly the same gentle girl from before most of the time, but now with a drive to be the top kunoichi. She constantly succeeded in all of her classes, and only her timid nature stopped her from being the top kunoichi. However, if you badmouthed Naruto in her presence, she had this look. A look that said that if you were eager to die, you should continue. It was made all the more unnerving by its complete contrast to her normal quiet disposition. At least she wasn't as bad as Sakura when it came to Naruto. Iruka rationalized. He remembered when it first became obvious that insulting or belittling Naruto within Sakura's hearing was bad for one's health. It's because Naruto is stupid. One of the students helpfully offered when asked why Naruto didn't understand theory as easily as the other students. Most of the students had laughed at the comment. But unlike before, Sakura wasn't one of them. She instead stood up from her desk and calmly walked over to the laughing student. Sadly, the student ignored the obvious danger that was walking his way, and continued to make jokes about Naruto's lack of mental facilities. Did you call Naruto stupid? Sakura inquired, hints of anger bubbling under the surface of her calm tone. That's what you said, wasn't it? The student had grinned and the pink-haired girl's fists clenched. The student, missing the obvious danger signs, replied that he had. Sakura promptly decked him. She then loomed over his body as he whimpered, his nose bloody and broken, and threatened that she would re-break his face each time he said something bad about Naruto. Her green eyes flashed with barely suppressed anger, and the student frantically assured her that he wouldn't say anything bad about Naruto ever again. Sakura had then made her way back to her seat. It had only taken 2 more incidents before the class realized that Sakura was very serious about violently protecting Naruto's time the pink-haired girl was sent to the office, and each time she was unrepentant. Her parents were unsure, but Iruka knew that infighting wasn't something he could kick a student out for, much less one of the top kunoichi. Konoha always needed good shinobi. Strangely, even though Sakura was one of Naruto's only friends, she still declared herself as Sasuke's true love. This had led to many of the girls in the class, especially the ones of Sasuke's fan club, to train themselves much harder to keep up with Sakura. And because all of the girls were training harder, the boys soon followed. Overall, the Hokage was pleased with this year's class performance. And lastly, but perhaps the most obvious, was Naruto himself. For the longest time Iruka had believed that Naruto was untalented. That even though Naruto tried his best, he simply didn't have the talent necessary to succeed. It sounded harsh, but that was the way the world was. The untalented supported the talented. It was the way the world was. However, about the same time Naruto became friends with Sakura, he seemed to have some mental switch thrown. He began to listen in class. He was quieter and didn't scream about being the best ninja ever. And when it was practical training days, well, Naruto dominated them. But sometimes Iruka caught glimpses of something darker lurking behind Naruto's bright, innocent eyes. The teacher remembered when he had gotten a glimpse of it during a sparring match. It had been a normal day in class. Sakura was answering all of the questions correctly that she was asked on the first try. However, some students didn't appreciate a non-clan student answering so many questions, much less answering them correctly. One student in particular had whispered quite loudly to his friend about the size of Sakura's forehead compared to her brain. Sakura flinched and ducked her head, having been bullied in the past on her slightly oversized forehead. A moment after Sakura ducked her head, it seemed that the air itself grew colder. Students shifted uneasily in their seats, all of them quiet for once. And then Naruto spoke to the formerly jeering student. "You made Sakura sad. I'll remember that." Naruto's voice was quiet, but it had a certain, deadly calm about it. The oppressive atmosphere lifted a moment later and the lesson resumed. After a few days, it seemed that all of the students in the class had forgotten all about the incident. It was little over 2 weeks later before Iruka saw anything like that from Naruto again. It was practical training day. The students were randomly matched up to spar against one another, as per normal. And as luck would have it, Naruto was matched up with Sakura's tormentor. What happened next would be forever ingrained in Iruka's memory. After the match started, Naruto just stood there, watching his opponent. Then he spoke. "Remember what I told you? How I wouldn't forget." Naruto's voice was deadly calm once again, but there was frozen fire beneath the calm. And then Naruto moved. It wasn't a spar. It wasn't even really a fight. It was probably the most one-sided beatdown Iruka had ever seen. Naruto's movements and blows seemed to flow from one to another. Each hit was far beyond what any academy student should know. Iruka didn't even spot a hint of the academy style in any of Naruto's movements. And the worst part was that Naruto could have ended the fight within the first few seconds. But he continued to fight his opponent for a minute and a half. At that point, a powerful uppercut from Naruto had knocked the student through the air, and letting the student crash onto the ground several feet away. The Uzumaki stalked forward towards the student. When he got close to the student, Naruto had reached down with one hand, and with an impressive show of strength, hoisted the frightened bigger boy off the ground by his collar. Naruto leaned close to the student. "Now if you say anything bad about Sakura or my friends again, I'll really hurt you." His voice was chillingly calm. As he finished, the same oppressive air as before had settled over the ring. "Do you understand?" Anger simmered just below the surface of Naruto's calm tone. The student nodded frantically, too scared to speak. Naruto let the atmosphere linger for a moment longer. Then, once again with one hand, had simply tossed the student outside of the ring. Stunned silence followed. Iruka saw Naruto blink, and then the happy-go-lucky Naruto was back. Iruka sighed again. He loved being a teacher, but some days were more difficult than others. Well, at least it was a holiday weekend. If I'm lucky, I might be able to finish grading the quizzes and still make it to the teacher's dinner party. Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed heavily as he finished the paperwork for the day. The last 2 years had been trying to say the least. It seemed that he kept getting more and more paperwork, keeping him at the office for longer and longer periods of time each day. Hell, he hadn't even been able to visit Naruto in over a year. Given who Naruto's parents were, it was only fitting that the Hokage attempted to maintain close ties with him. It may be just as well, Hiruzen admitted to himself. He had enjoyed a close friendship with Naruto, the village's Jinchuriki, until about 4 years ago. Then, the Hokage couldn't quite pinpoint when, Naruto had slowly stepped away from their relationship. To this day, Hiruzen had no idea why. And since he couldn't spy on Naruto using the spy crystal ball, the Jinchuriki had far too much chakra for that method. He had left it up to Naruto to take care of himself. After all, Naruto was the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed demon fox. And Konoha's last Jinchuriki grew up just fine on her own. Besides, Hiruzen justified it to himself. The most the village would do is a little name-calling against Naruto. I'll visit Naruto the day after the Kyuubi festival. I'm sure he wants to participate in the festival with his friends. Hiruzen decided with a nod. He then withheld another heavy sigh as he looked over at the pile of paperwork still awaiting his attention. Sakura frowned as she watched Naruto hurry away. He had said something about seeing Tuchi and Ayame, the owners of Ichiraku Ramen, before he had to stay away for a few days. Unaware that her face twisted up into a thoughtful look as she pondered the mystery that was Naruto, Sakura considered all of the facts she knew. Naruto, while perhaps not the smartest person around, was a great friend, perhaps even her best friend. But she wasn't blind. Many villagers seemed to greatly dislike Naruto for some strange, unknown, illogical reason. And one of the few things the pink-haired girl hated was illogical puzzles that didn't need to be puzzles. And she, Sakura privately admitted to herself, wanted to help Naruto. She steeled herself for what she was about to do. Ask Hinata for help. Hinata watched as Naruto ran off after saying something to Sakura. Did she say something to make him leave? Hinata wondered, slowly getting angry as her thoughts took a darker turn. If she did, I'll do something back. No one hurts Naruto-kun. Her thoughts drifted to the past when she had first become Naruto's friend. You are weak. The words of Hiyashi, Hinata's father, echoed in Hinata's mind. You are far too timid and weak. The 9-year-old lowered her head at his harsh and unforgiving tone. After the Hyuga clan had swept out of the room, only then did the young child let the tears fall. Slowly pushing herself up, Hinata found herself wandering out of the Hyuga clan compound, her feet automatically moving towards a small training ground. Arriving at the edge of the tree line, Hinata peered out from behind the thick oak to watch someone train. Someone special, Naruto Uzumaki. When life had gotten tough, when her father was disappointed in her yet again, when she failed clan training once again, she would escape and watch the blonde Uzumaki. He was strong, he was talented, he was swift and sure, he was confident and eternally defiant. In short, he was everything she was not. Hinata still wasn't sure what had happened between him and Sakura, but ever since that fateful day when Mizuki had sent him home to his parents, Naruto spent most of his time training with the pink-haired girl. Rare were days like this one when Naruto was training alone. You are weak. Her father's words echoed in her mind again. Turning away from the training ground in front of her, Hinata leaned back against the thick tree. I'm weak. The words she had heard all her life ghosted out of her lips. I wish I could be strong like Naruto. If she was strong and determined like he was, Hinata was certain her father would like her and maybe, just maybe, he would be proud of her. Her eyes drifted shut, damming the tears that threatened to fall. I'll always be weak. Are you alright? Hinata jolted forward at the sudden question. Snapping her head to direction the voice had come from, she felt her heart stutter as she saw Naruto standing a few feet from her. Concern reflected in his sky-blue eyes, and for a brief moment, Hinata couldn't remember why she was crying. Heat bloomed on her cheeks as she abruptly remembering she had been spying on him just a few minutes prior. The ground tilted as her blush rapidly deepened. No, Hinata desperately resisted the urge to faint. I can't faint. Not here, not now. Are you alright? Naruto took a step forward. Why yes. Hinata seemed to shrink inside herself. I'm alright. Okay. Naruto settled back on his heels, relieved that the strange girl wasn't going to pass out. What are you doing here? When she did not respond, the Uzumaki tried a different tactic. I was training. Do you train? The blonde was fairly certain that the girl was in his class. Want to train with me? Naruto extended his hand. I was weak too until I met Sakura-chan. Hinata stared at the hand. B but I'm N not G good A at TR training. Hinata stammered, I'm T to T timid. Want to know a secret about how to get really good at training? Naruto grinned, I know it works. Hinata forgot her tears and nodded. Perhaps father could be proud of her. Train all the time. Hinata blinked at Naruto's words. The blonde, seeing that she wasn't understanding, elaborated. There's no quick way to get strong. You have to find something worth protecting, someone who you will die for. Then, train to protect them. Someone to protect? Hinata whispered, wondering at the strange logic. All her life she had heard that the clan was the only thing that mattered, and each day she had been told how she brought shame to the Hyuga name. B but I'm weak. So what? Naruto shrugged, I was weak too. But, his voice grew fond, after I met Sakura-chan, I decided that it didn't matter if I was weak or not. I would grow strong to protect her no matter what. Hinata glanced at the still extended hand. Why you think IIC can be STR strong 01D day? Her pale eyes searched his own, looking for lies. There was only honesty. That's up to you. Naruto smiled, and it was like the sun had begun to shine. But if you want help, I'll help you. Hinata took a deep breath, and reached out for his hand. She had trained with him that day, and the first time she had missed blocking a blow, Hinata had stopped, lowering her eyes. Her shoulders slumped. This was it, she believed, now Naruto will know that I am weak. Hey, she flinched as his hand settled on her shoulder, are you alright? Her gaze snapped upwards to look at him. There was no trace of anger or disappointment in his eyes. Only, concern? Why? Hinata whispered, why do you believe in me? Her short hair fluttered in the wind as she shook her head, why aren't you calling me weak? Telling me that I've shamed you? Her hands clenched fruitlessly at her side. Why? Because someone believed in me when I was weak. Naruto replied simply. A moment later the Uzumaki stepped back and grinned. Let's continue. Hinata didn't move. How could he believe in her? Okay. Naruto clapped his hands. I'll make you a deal. Work your absolute best every day and train as hard as you can. In exchange, I'll be there when you graduate. He tilted his head to the side and offered a hand. Deal? You'll be there for me? Something warm bubbled up in her soul, something she hadn't felt since her mother died. You believe that I could do it? If you believe it, Naruto smiled, then I do too. And in that moment, Hinata couldn't help but believe, couldn't deny Naruto's words. And then, she decided to believe. His smile was like a radiant sun. Hinata took a step forward. I'll accept your deal. She found herself smiling. It was a small and shy smile, but it was the first time she had smiled in such a long time. As they resumed training, Hinata couldn't help but whisper, thank you, Naruto-kun. Hinata was startled out of her thoughts by Sakura's voice as she ran up to her. Hinata, do you have a minute? Sakura asked. Drawing upon all of her Hyuga formal training, Hinata turned and, with the famed emotionless mask of the Hyuga intact, inquired, what do you want, Haruno? Taken aback by Hinata's tone, Sakura fought the illogical urge to raise her hands and surrender. Well, Naruto has gone off to visit Ichiraku's, but he's acting odd. Sakura, seeing Hinata start to calm down, hurried on with her explanation. But it's different than normal. He's acting like he won't see them for a few days. Hinata's entire demeanor changed upon hearing Sakura's explanation. What do you think is going on? She stuttered in worry, half expecting Naruto to pop up and congratulate her on only stuttering twice. When Naruto didn't appear, her worry intensified. Maybe we should go visit him at his house. Hinata finished, very concerned about her friend. Sakura snapped her fingers and pointed in a random direction. Yeah. Good idea. The pink-haired girl nodded firmly. We'll go to Naruto's house and see what's wrong. After a moment, Sakura's jubilation faded as she realized a critical flaw in their plan. Wait, I have no idea where Naruto lives. Her head snapped to face Hinata, prompting a small squeak of surprise from the pale-eyed girl. Hinata, where does Naruto live? Sakura leaned towards Hinata, almost bumping into her. I don't know. Hinata stuttered, badly rattled by Sakura's intensity. Sakura's shoulders slumped. How were they supposed to find Naruto now? Damn it. Sakura burst out after a moment. How are we supposed to find Naruto now? It's not like he lives next door. It's not like we can just go up to the nearest adult and ask, where did Naruto go? Her tone rose as she grew more and more aggravated. Taking a few steps back from the Sakura's now open ranting, Hinata found herself torn between staying with Sakura and fleeing the potential danger zone. And what's with all of the looks people give Naruto? Huh? What did he ever do to them? I bet they are just jealous of his progress. Sakura took several deep breaths as she recovered. What would Naruto-kun do in this situation? Hinata questioned, half to herself. It was a question she often asked herself. What would He say? Sakura snorted. Please. The baka would ask me. She attempted to mimic Naruto's voice as she imagined what he would say. Sakura-chan, did you read about this type of thing in one of those books you read? Sakura reverted back in her normal tone. No, Naruto. I haven't read a book on where people live. That would be at the Shinobi Library. Sakura froze as soon as she finished the sentence. Hinata's and her eyes met. Ah. Naruto hummed happily to himself as he left Ichiraku's. That was good ramen. He silently mourned the loss of ramen for a few days, but it wasn't safe to be out so close to the Kyuubi festival. Mobs of both ninja and civilian alike tended to look for him on those days. Naruto shuddered slightly in remembrance. Last time they had caught him, it had taken him almost 4 days to completely heal. It had hurt a lot, but at least they didn't go for the eyes last time. He grunted in appreciation. Actually, come to think of it, they didn't use the hooks either. As he happily strolled towards his apartment, he failed to notice several shadows following him, waiting to catch the young blonde alone. A sudden blow to Naruto's side sent him flying into a conveniently abandoned alleyway. Grunting softly to himself as he pushed himself off the ground, the blonde tried to piece together what had happened. What had hit me? It's not time for the festival, so. The 3 crowding shadows instantly told him what had happened, and cut off any more thoughts. Naruto took a deep breath, stifling the icy panic that raced through his veins. He dropped into his combat stance. They weren't getting him without a fight. Not this time. Look at this, boys. The demon thinks that it can defeat us. One of the 2 of the shinobis crowed as he walked into the alley with his friend. As they walked closer and closer, Naruto felt his heart begin to pound. His vision became sharper. Sounds became louder. The smell of the ally increased. Naruto tensed, each muscle waiting in unison to be unleashed. Then, Naruto charged. The Uzumaki's left hand slammed into the first ninja's stomach, knocking him back several feet. The second ninja noticed his friend flying away and, with a snarl of rage, swung his fist at Naruto. Naruto twisted out of the way of the fist, grabbed the extended arm, and pulled himself towards the shocked shinobi's head. Naruto's knee smashed into the ninja's face with a loud crunch. Hammering his fists into the side of the shinobi's temples to stun him, the Uzumaki leapt over the falling ninja. Reaching back and grabbing the shinobi's face as he fell, Naruto slammed the back of the ninja's head into the hard dirt as he landed, the attacking shinobi's head making a dull thud as it hit the ground. Naruto dashed off, heading towards the open street in relative safety. He was only 3 steps from the road when his body froze. Kagemane no Jutsu spat a third ninja that Naruto hadn't noticed. The Uzumaki found himself, unwillingly, walking back into the alley. After walking back past the unconscious ninja he had beaten, Naruto was released from the binding shadows. Before could react, he felt piercing pain in both of his hands as he was slammed into the wall several feet off the ground. The sharp pain was familiar, some distant part of his mind noted even as he let out a gasp of pain and instinctively looked over at his left hand. A kunai was buried deep in his hands, pinning Naruto to the wall. The ninja's enraged voice brought his attention back to the 2 ninja in front of him. "You monster. You hurt Goru. I'll kill you for that." Slowly. The edge of enraged hysteria in the man's tone was something Naruto had heard countless times. He braced himself for the pain. The ninja threw 2 more kunai at Naruto, both weapons crossing the small space to smash into the Uzumaki's lungs with a wet thump. Naruto choked as he felt his lungs slowly start to fill with blood, the unwanted but familiar iron taste hitting his tongue. He refused to cry out in pain. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction. The shinobi sneered, "No cries? Don't worry, demon, I'll make you scream before you die." The ninja slowly withdrew another kunai. Naruto's eyes widened. He began to struggle. His muscles tensed, refused to be helpless. A faint metallic noise of metal on brick echoed in the alley. "I promised Sakura-chan I would be there in class." Naruto began to push. I refuse to die. Both of the ninja's eyes widened in fear as Naruto began to slowly pull the kunai out of the wall, the metal on brick scraping sound echoing again. Quick! Do something! The shinobi with the kunai shouted to his partner. Right! The ninja slammed his hands into a single seal, Kage Nui no Jutsu. Naruto slammed back into the wall with enough force to drive the air out of his lungs. He choked and his throat burned as he fought for air, though the blood that was pooling in his mouth. A searing pain in his abdomen snapped him back to the ninja. The shinobi with the kunai twisted the weapon he had just buried deep within Naruto's abdomen, an almost feral growl of hate escaping the man's lips. What are you going to do now, little demon? Going to cry? The ninja mocked. Naruto glared defiantly back at the ninja and spat a massive glob of blood in his face. The ninja jerked back, hissing in disgust as he wiped his face. Naruto locked eyes with the shinobi and drew in a breath to spit again. The ninja flinched. The shinobi paused. He made eye contact with Naruto. Naruto glared back. The ninja looked away. Then, a cruel smile appeared on the ninja's face and he stepped forward with a snarl and grabbed the kunai still buried within Naruto's abdomen. His smile grew as he began to slowly cut his way upwards, slowly slicing his way through muscle and organs. The pain was almost indescribable. But Naruto knew that he had to fight through the pain and escape. Otherwise, he was going to die. But he couldn't die. Not here. Not now. I promised Sakura-chan that I would be in class. So Naruto began to push. I promised Hinata-chan that I would be there when she graduated the academy. He pushed against the shadow, both inside his mind and the one outside holding him prisoner. I will not die. The dark smile froze on the shinobi's face as dark blue chakra began to waft from Naruto's bloody body. The Jinchuriki began straining against the bonds holding him. The Nara commanding the shadow that was binding Naruto began to feel the strain of holding the demon at bay. A low roar began building up in Naruto's throat as the chakra intensified. Refuse to die. Both of the shinobi were blasted back as Naruto roared, shattering the shadow's hold on him. The petrified ninjas quickly grabbed their friend and left, not wanting to be around the demon, nor did they want to be there when the Anbu arrived to investigate Naruto's chakra spike. Naruto never noticed them leave. Gray spots danced in his vision as blood gushed from his wounds. A snarl rumbled out of the Uzumaki as he heaved his body forward, again and again, pulling the kunai out of the wall a little more each time. After what seemed to be a pain-filled lifetime, the kunai gave way. Naruto fell, hitting the unforgiving ground with a muted thump, swallowing the scream of pain that tried to tear its way out of his throat as the kunai were driven deeper into him when he hit the ground. Naruto slapped his hand against the ground and tried to push himself up. After several failed attempts, the blonde finally heaved himself to his knees. Slowly raising a shaking hand slowly in front of him, he stared at the kunai rammed through his palm. With all the blood he had lost, it took him several seconds to figure out the best way to remove the kunai from the hand, given that there was a kunai stuck in his other hand as well. Naruto took a deep, rattling wet breath and steeled himself, distancing himself from the pain. He raised his hand towards his mouth. His teeth clicked against kunai's metal ring. Naruto pulled. Naruto clutched his bleeding, kunai free hand to his chest, barely withholding a whimper of pain. After the pain subsided slightly, the Uzumaki reached over and pulled the kunai out of his other hand with a pained grunt that brought a tear to his eyes. Blinking, Naruto belatedly realized that he was feeling a little numb, almost as if he was viewing his actions outside of his body. Carefully wrapping his blood-soaked hands around the two kunai embedded in his chest, the Uzumaki gently pulled them out. As blood began to rapidly fill his punctured lungs, Naruto quickly reached down and jerked the kunai from his abdomen. His heart began to thud. The kunai clattered to the ground as nausea bubbled up, and Naruto choked before hunching over, vomiting and coughing as his body desperately tried to rid itself of the blood pooling within. His eyes burned with unshed tears as his body expelled blood, bile, and ramen. Black spots swam across his vision as he was able to halt the violent heaves. The ground seemed to shift and sway as the Uzumaki staggered to his feet. He made it several steps before the roaring in his ears became too much and Naruto pitched forward into blackness. Sakura breathed out a sigh of annoyance. Who knew that looking for someone's address could be so difficult? Tracking down Naruto proving quite time-consuming, and the library lady wasn't helping them in the slightest. Sakura was certain that the librarian had been giving them discreet disapproving looks for looking for Naruto. Sakura snorted quietly, as if she cared what some old lady thought about them. Hinata carefully looked around. Where would the information we need be? She wondered thoughtfully as she scanned the book titles in front of her. A moment later, a spark of inspiration hit her. What if they tracked down Naruto's parents instead? They would have to be in the Book of Citizens, given that Naruto was, and by proxy his parents, a citizen of Konoha. Sakura huffed again. Stupid Naruto. He's causing trouble even when he isn't here. Why couldn't he have just told me what's wrong so I can help fix it? Annoyance warred with slight hurt. Doesn't Naruto trust me? Hinata's voice broke Sakura of her spiraling thoughts. Sakura-san, I think I have an idea to find Naruto-kun. Hinata couldn't help the excitement that bubbled up in her as she realized how she could help Naruto. Sakura spun around to face Hinata, the look in Sakura's eyes prompting Hinata to continue with her idea. If we go look for Naruto-kun's parents, we should find him. She ducked her head, half expecting Sakura to decry her idea, especially if Sakura's narrowing eyes were any indication. That's a good idea, Hinata. Let's go do that right now. Sakura ordered before moving towards the records section of the library, quickly followed by Hinata. The genealogy volumes weren't hard to locate, and they gathered the 4 volumes that kept the names of everyone with the last name starting with U. The girls quickly decided to split the books up between the two of them. After about an hour of reading, the girls had gone through one of the volumes each. As Sakura neared the end of her 4th volume, she found Naruto Uzumaki and his address. However, there was a problem with the records. Namely the fact that Naruto's status was orphan. Hinata, Sakura spoke, startling the blue-haired girl out of her reading. I found it. Hinata quickly moved over to Sakura to look at the information. Naruto-kun is an orphan. Hinata exclaimed in surprise, feeling something tickling at the back of her brain. Something wasn't right about Naruto's status. Suddenly Hinata remembered that day just over 2 years ago. Why don't you go to your parents and have them get you checked out by a medic nin? I'm sure they would care enough about you to help you out. Hinata gasped. Mizuki-sensei had meant to hurt Naruto-kun. She was distracted from her building anger as Sakura asked, what's wrong? Did something happen? Hinata turned away from Sakura as she asked, do you remember the D-Day Naruto was kicked out of C-Class T 2 years ago? The D-Day that you met Naruto-kun after the academy? Sakura blinked. She remembered that day well. Slight guilt edged at her mind at the memory of laughing at Naruto. Yes, the pink-haired girl crossed her arms. I remember. What of it? What did Mizuki say to Naruto-kun? Sakura paused. Her forehead crinkled as she tried to remember his exact words. Hinata waited. After a few moments, Sakura's face darkened. Hinata knew an explosion was inevitable. Who the hell did he think he was? Making Naruto sad like that. The volume of Sakura tone quickly rose and her fists clenched in anger. When I see him next, I'll punch his lights out. Sakura continued ranting for the next few moments, her voice echoing in the quiet library. Shush. Hinata hushed Sakura, not wanting to get kicked out of the library. Finding Naruto-kun is more important right now. We'll get Mizuki B back later. Arrrg. Sakura threw up her hands and stormed out of the library. Hinata hurried after her. As the two headed deeper into Konoha, Sakura skidded to a halt as she realized she had forgotten something important. Oh damn, I have to go tell my parents where I am going. Spinning on her heel, Sakura sprinted off towards her house. Come on, she tossed over her shoulder to Hinata. The faster we go talk to them, the faster we can find Naruto. Wait for me. Hinata quietly murmured as she chased after Sakura. Don't leave me behind. After an exhausting 20-minute run, Sakura arrived at her house. The picturesque, 2-story home felt different to Hinata. It was odd, she considered, this simple home had more life and care than practically all of the Hyuga clan homes combined. Sakura simply barged in the front door and shouted for her mother. Mom, are you here? She called, as she entered the hallway. Where are you, Mom? I'm upstairs, Sakura-chan. Sakura's mother, Mebuki, called back down. I just got called into the hospital. You can come upstairs to talk. Sakura motioned to Hinata to follow her as she headed up the steps. The pink-haired girl walked into her mother's room, spying Mebuki gathering up her personal nursing tools. Mom, Hinata and I are going to be spending a few hours with a friend. Is that all right? Mebuki turned to face Sakura, her face smoothing into a happy smile. Of course dear. What's your friend's name? Naruto Uzumaki. Mebuki froze, the blood draining from her face. Oh no. Sakura, feeling her stomach drop, tried to deny what her mind had just realized. Mom, Naruto is fine, right? Mebuki gave Sakura a sad shake of her head. He's the reason I am going in. Seeing Sakura and Hinata about to cry, hurried on to say, why don't you two come with me? I'm sure Naruto will want his friends there when he wakes up. Sakura and Hinata nodded. Naruto's condition couldn't be that bad, right? Mebuki Haruno hurried towards the Konoha hospital. Sakura, her daughter, and Sakura's friend, Hinata, did their best to keep pace. After traveling for nearly 20 minutes, the three arrived at Konoha First Hospital. Mebuki approached the front desk and inquired, excuse me. I am wondering what room Naruto Uzumaki is in. Recognizing Mebuki, the receptionist scanned the records. A moment later her brow furrowed in confusion as she reviewed Naruto's chart. Why is he marked DNR if he is that young? Shaking herself out of her confusion. Perhaps there was a mistake on the chart? No sane person would give up on a child. The receptionist nodded and turned to the elder Haruno. He's in room 317. Thanking the receptionist, Mebuki motioned to Sakura and Hinata to follow her to the waiting room. Once she got the girls settled, she had to promise that she would tell them of Naruto's condition before they would wait. She headed for room 317. Whatever Mebuki was expecting when she entered the room, this wasn't it. The stench of blood and other vital liquids was an almost physical assault on the senses. Naruto had been dumped on the hospital bed, his seemingly fatal wounds slowly bleeding onto the once white bed sheets. His pale, waxen face twitched and each breath was a gurgling cough as his unconscious body fought for the right to breathe. Mebuki took a deep breath and steeled herself. Then she got to work. Mebuki let out a tired, content sigh. It had been a difficult hour, but she had successfully sewn up Naruto's wounds and started him on a blood bag. She was still honestly confused why Naruto hadn't simply died from his wounds. If she didn't know better, she would have sworn that the young sunny-haired boy's wounds were slowly healing by themselves. I wonder what emergency called all of the nurses and doctors away from the hospital. It had to been something very significant to leave Naruto in the state that he had been in prior to her assistance. Turning away to head out of the room, Mebuki turned out the light and softly closed the door. Naruto's chart had said that he injured himself during training, but something with that explanation just didn't sit right with the nurse. How could he have been that careless? Sakura and Hinata grew more and more worried when Sakura's mother didn't reappear to inform them of Naruto's status. Sakura knew, from her mother's stories of the hospital, that spending a lot of time with an injured patient meant that there was either complications or the patient was seriously injured. Neither option was appealing to Sakura. Nervously nibbling on her lip, the pinkette cast a worried glance towards the door her mother had left through. What's wrong with Naruto-kun? Hinata wished, not for the first time, that her eyes would not consume so much chakra when she used her bloodline. She wished that she could have the power to see those walls easily like her fellow clansmen. That way, she could see that Naruto was fine. Closing her eyes, the young Hyuga began to concentrate on channeling chakra to her eyes in hopes that her bloodline would activate properly. She had never been too terribly good with it. All previous times she had used her Byakugan she had barely managed a vision sphere of 15 feet, and it had been blurry, but her need was never as great as it was now. After an indeterminable amount of time passed, her eyes began to stain, the sensation similar to staring at a bright light for just a moment too long. Hinata's eyes stung, and the pain increased more and more until it was almost too much. Biting her lip to avoid crying out, the young girl fought to keep her chakra flowing to her eyes. Naruto-kun never gives up. I won't either. Then, abruptly, the pain stopped. Something seemed to click deep inside, the feeling close to tight muscles finally loosening. Then, she opened her eyes. It was disorienting at first to suddenly see clearly in all directions. It was even more so to see through objects. Narrowing her eyes, Hinata concentrated on finding Naruto. As her vision slowly expanded, she saw Sakura's mother heading in their direction. Eyes widening, the Hyuga girl pushed even more chakra into her eyes, searching for a glimpse of her friend. It was frowned upon to use the Byakugan in public areas, given that one could easily invade the privacy of others. Her vision expanded outwards, almost encompassing the entire hospital. There was just so many people and things, and Hinata felt a headache prodding at the edge of her consciousness from attempting to assess all of the visual input at once. Narrowing her focus, she searched for the sunny blonde hair she knew so well. Intensely aware of the invisible clock that was ticking downwards as Mebuki neared their location, Hinata almost despaired. How could she find Naruto among all of the other people within her eyesight? Then, she spotted a glimpse of blonde hair as she flicked her vision past one of the rooms. Focusing, she concentrated on the room. For the briefest moment she didn't comprehend what she was seeing. Why is there so much white on Naruto-kun? Gasping as she realized what the white actually was, Hinata couldn't stop her hand from covering her mouth in horror. The white wrappings Naruto were bandages. The click of the waiting room door snapped the Hyuga back to her current location. Slamming her eyes shut, she concentrated on reeling back her vision and then retracting the chakra to her eyes to turn off her Byakugan, the all-seeing white eye. Opening her eyes again, Hinata breathed a silent sigh of relief as it looked like Mebuki hadn't noticed her bloodline use. Sakura perked up from her depressed slump as her mother entered the waiting room. Her mother looked tired but content, the pink-haired student decided after a moment of assessment. Did that mean Naruto was going to be okay? Mebuki looked at her daughter, who was struggling not to blurt out questions about her friend's condition. Taking pity on Sakura, she answered her daughter's unasked question. Naruto is going to be fine. It was a bit of trouble at first, but he's stable now. She explained, her tone the same one she used to reassure her patients that everything would be alright, he's just resting. Can we see him? Sakura half-asked half-demanded, as relief flooded through her. Naruto was going to be alright. Of course dear. Follow me. Mebuki beckoned the two girls to follow her. After a few minutes of walking, they arrived at room 317. Mebuki entered the room, followed closely by Sakura and Hinata. Upon seeing Naruto's bandaged, unmoving form, the two girls couldn't stop the tears as they made their way over to the blonde's bedside, unconsciously moving to opposite sides of the hospital bed. Hinata scanned Naruto for visible injuries as Sakura brushed Naruto's hair back out of his face. Both of the girls' eyes met, and for the first time, they knew what the other girl was thinking, all without speaking a word. Finding chairs, the pair sat next to their side of Naruto's hospital bed. Smiling softly as she watched her daughter and her friend for a moment, Mebuki finally allowed herself to relax. It was good that Sakura had found friends that she was willing to stick by, and the young Uzumaki would be alright. It had been several hours since Sakura and Hinata had started waiting next to Naruto's bedside. During that time, the two had discussed plans on how to get even with Mizuki. They had discussed, discarded, and finalized several plans, in case one went awry. They then had discussed how Naruto had gotten his injuries, considering that Naruto wouldn't have hurt himself so critically if he was training. This had, in turn, started a discussion about how the villagers disliked Naruto. As the last of the hours drew to a close, Sakura and Hinata had decided on waiting to ask Naruto what had happened, since things were just not adding up. The muted sounds of a conversation above him slowly roused Naruto from his heavy slumber. He could feel something wrapped tightly around his hands and torso. Whatever it was, he was fairly confident that it couldn't keep him trapped. Familiar with aches and twinges of pain associated with waking up after a massive injury, the blonde continued to stir, gradually becoming more aware of the world around him. The first thing he noticed was the soft bed that he was laying on. It was probably the softest thing he had ever laid on in his entire life, and that was including the time he had camped out in the lush grass fields belonging to the Nara clan. Soon, Naruto was able to identify the two voices above him. It was Sakura-chan and Hinata-chan. Focusing on pushing past the tiredness that clung to him like a second skin, he ignored the spikes of soreness that pulsed from his hands and abdomen. He slowly opened his eyes. The room was white, and had a sterile smell. Everything was white walls and brushed steel. But then something infinitely more important than studying his surroundings intruded into Naruto's space. It was Sakura and Hinata. I wonder why they are here. The Uzumaki blinked. Wherever here is. Tilting his head as he remembered an important detail from the fight. I should see if I can get back to the alley. Those were some high-quality kunai. I could always use a few more. It was testament to Sakura's and Hinata's training that they noticed the Naruto's breath pattern change from resting to wakefulness. Halting the refinement of their plans about dealing with Masuki, they both leaned forward slightly to confirm Naruto's condition themselves over and noticing Naruto's confused bright blue eyes staring at them. Tears filled their eyes, and only one exultant crossed their minds. Naruto was alright. Hi Sakura-chan and Hinata-chan. Naruto sleepily smiled, automatically shunting aside his own confusion in favor of stopping his friend's tears. He wasn't sure exactly why they were sad, but he knew that he had to do all in his power to make them happy again. Hinata broke first, and Naruto-kun. Hinata sobbed into his chest, I was so worried. A deluge of guilt washed over Naruto. It was all his fault that Hinata was crying. Sakura broke next, don't ever scare me again like that baka. She choked out amidst her now freely falling tears. You were so pale and still. Naruto made a promise to himself in that instant. I will never cause Sakura-chan and Hinata-chan to cry again. Even if it kills me. The Uzumaki lay on the bed, overwhelmed with guilt and confusion. Waiting for Hinata and Sakura to stop crying was agonizing, made even more because he knew no way of making them happy until they could tell him what he did wrong. After what seemed like an eternity to Naruto, Sakura's and Hinata's tears petered out. What did I do wrong? There was a heartbreaking earnestness to Naruto's tone, I didn't mean to make you cry. Sakura and Hinata froze. What was Naruto talking about? Sakura slowly raised her head to look at Naruto. You didn't do anything wrong baka. We were just worried, that's all. Naruto tilted his head to the side as he contemplated Sakura's words. They didn't really answer his question, but as long as Sakura was feeling better, that's what was important. That was all that mattered. Naruto-kun. Hinata's slightly trembling voice broke Naruto and Sakura out of their thoughts. What happened to you? What caused you to get hurt? Naruto shifted to look at Hinata. Hinata-chan, Naruto congratulated, you didn't stutter too much just now. Flushing at the praise her crush had bestowed upon her, Hinata ducked her head, unable to thank him for his kind words. Unconsciously, her pointer fingers poked one another as she focused on what had just happened, holding onto the words with all her might. Naruto had complimented her. Her, the shame of the Hyuga clan. Her, the weakness of the Hyuga clan. Her, the eternal disappointment. Her, Hinata Hyuga. Sakura frowned. She wasn't sure why, but when Naruto had complimented Hinata, a slightly funny feeling had developed in her stomach. She grunted to herself and pushed it aside in favor of demanding Naruto to answer the question. Naruto, what happened to you? You couldn't have hurt yourself that badly in training. Naruto blinked. Why did they think I hurt myself when I was training? Scrunching up his face in thought, he tried to think of the last time he had seriously hurt himself while training. It was, maybe a year ago? Well, I was trying to learn how to do the clone shuriken jutsu last year. I may have pushed myself a bit too much. His hand drifted up to rub the back of his neck. But don't worry, I haven't done anything like that since. It doesn't seem like I can do any type of clone techniques. Sakura blinked. She didn't know that. She opened her mouth to reprimand Naruto for being so reckless, but then closed it with a snap as she realized that Naruto wasn't talking about what had just happened today to him. And if Naruto hadn't gotten hurt training, then what had hurt him? Naruto. An unnameable sickening sensation settled in Sakura's stomach. If you didn't get hurt training, then how did you get hurt? Huh? Naruto blinked in confusion. Oh. He added a moment later, belatedly realizing what his friend was talking about. Shrugging, he waved a bandaged hand dismissively. I just got cornered by 3 ninjas and an ally. I knocked one out before they used some binding jutsu and pinned me to the wall. They then stabbed me a few times before they ran off. Hinata and Sakura stilled for a moment before they began to tremble. But they were trembling for completely different reasons. Hinata was trembling at the horrifying reality that someone would willingly hurt her Naruto-kun. Sakura on the other hand, was trembling with a slowly increasing rage. Who had hurt Naruto? She would find them and beat them down. Hurt them so bad that they wouldn't ever think about hurting him ever again. Naruto watched the proceedings with wide eyes. What did I say to make them upset again? Guilt started to bubble up from deep inside, threatening to choke him. "I'm sorry," he burst out. "I don't know what I did to make you too sad, but I'm sorry." Sitting up as fast as he could, his head swung from friend to the other. "Just tell me how to fix whatever I did wrong." Sakura lowered her head and was silent for a few moments. Rage warred with sadness and understanding. Coming to a decision, she raised her head and locked eyes with Hinata. A silent conversation passed between them. After what seemed like an eternity to Naruto, Sakura finally spoke, her voice eerily calm. "It's all right, Naruto. You didn't do anything wrong." She then hesitated before continuing. "But don't worry, we'll help you avoid getting caught by those ninjas again. This is my promise, Naruto-kun." Iruka Amino hummed happily to himself as he prepared for the day. Today was graduation day for his class. The instructor pondered of the changes that had happened over the last year. Sakura Haruno had changed practically overnight. She now took training extremely seriously and had quickly risen to one of the top 10 students of the class. Hinata Hyuga had changed as well. While she was still the gentle girl from before, most of the time, when she was in a fight or spar, she changed. Her attacks were precise jabs of disabling power. Her Byakugan allowed her to seemingly find the pressure points of her opponent within an instant, allowing her to incapacitate her opponent with only a few quick strikes. She had also almost completely lost her stutter, no doubt due to Naruto's compliments. Naruto had also changed. He had tamed his boundless energy to a certain extent, and channeled that energy into becoming a close combat specialist. Most of the students would just surrender when faced with sparring Naruto now. In the last year, Iruka had gotten to know Naruto and had found the exuberant child oddly pleasant to talk to, once you learned what subjects to avoid. He had slowly befriended the young blonde, occasionally taking Naruto out for ramen. Iruka could safely say that he was looking forward to what Naruto could accomplish in the future. It had always puzzled him, however, how Naruto still got such terrible grades despite his best efforts, and the glowing reviews Iruka left in the blonde's files. Sadly, it was not all roses, as the saying goes. Sasuke Uchiha had grown angry and spiteful of Naruto's, objectively speaking, success. The Uchiha's superiority complex couldn't understand how such a clanless last, like Naruto, could invoke such fear in the academy students. Luckily, Sasuke had never sparred with Naruto as of yet. Iruka shuddered to think what would happen should Naruto defeat the arrogant Uchiha. It wouldn't be good. Iruka stretched. Being one of the examiners for the Genin exams, he had to arrive several hours before the exams started. Today is going to be a long day. Sakura awoke with a smile on her face. Today she was going to graduate with Naruto-kun and Hinata-san. From a purely statistical standpoint, there was a high chance that she would be on the same team as Naruto and Hinata. The Pinkette wouldn't have it any other way. And naturally, given that they had trained together already, they would be one of the best teams of their class, and perhaps even one of the greatest in the history of Konoha. Sakura grimaced slightly after she finished that thought. Perhaps Naruto rubbed off on her more than she thought. She shrugged. It wasn't like it was a terrible thing for Naruto to rub off on her. She was fairly certain that Naruto was incapable of doing anything terrible. The Genin hopeful headed off to start her morning routine with a bounce to her step. Once she finished with the light early morning workout, she headed downstairs to grab a quick breakfast before heading out to the academy. The aroma of warm food enveloped Sakura as she padded towards the kitchen. When she reached the source of the mouth-watering scents, she spotted her mother, Mebuki, flipping over an omelet, humming as she quickly moved from cooking one food item to the next on the stove. As Mebuki flicked the omelet onto a piece of toast, she noticed Sakura. "Hello dear, how did you sleep?" Mebuki inquired. "Would you like some breakfast before you go to the exam?" "I slept well," Sakura said as she sat at the table. "I need to eat quick since I'm graduating today along with Naruto-kun and Hinata-san." Mebuki giggled at Sakura's exuberance as she set the food in front of her pink-haired daughter. As she watched Sakura eat, the older woman was once again thankful for Naruto. He had convinced her daughter to eat more healthy food, pointing out that she couldn't woo Sasuke if she fall behind in training due to lack of energy. Mebuki hid a grin as she remembered when Sakura and Hinata had attempted to get Naruto to eat less ramen. The two had watched as Naruto ate a massive amount of ramen without suffering any issues, much to the Pinkette's bewilderment. Sakura had then demanded that Naruto join her for dinner at her house to get proper healthy food. Mabuki's grin faded as she remembered the first time Naruto had joined them for dinner. Compared to the vague rumors that Mabuki had heard from around town, Naruto was completely different. He was polite, perhaps overly so, and certainly didn't try to destroy anything. It had quickly become obvious that the young Uzumaki had never eaten with anyone in a more formal setting. Thankfully, her wonderful husband, Kazashi, had causally slowed his movements so that Naruto could copy them. Naruto had thanked them both for the food with a beautiful smile that made even the brightest lights look dim in comparison. After dinner, as Kazashi helped Sakura clean the dishes, Mabuki had the opportunity to talk to Naruto. It had started out innocently enough, but soon she found herself asking about Naruto's injuries that had landed him into the hospital 4 months prior. Her heart broke as Naruto casually explained what had happened. Naruto's emotionally disconnected tone as he retold the event had caused Mabuki to pull the young boy into a comforting hug. However, Naruto had stiffened upon her contact, and she quickly pulled back. What Naruto had said next changed her view of him and the village. What was that? Naruto seemed puzzled. It didn't hurt. He continued to ponder what strange action Mabuki had just done for several moments. It felt nice. Naruto finally decided. He was spared from further confusion as Sakura came back into the living room and asked if Naruto wanted to get a little more training in before bed. Naruto had happily agreed and the two headed towards the training ground, the pair already immersed in figuring out what they would train in. As soon as the door slammed shut behind them, Mabuki collapsed into her husband's arms, quietly sobbing. He didn't know what a hug was. She choked out, "He thought I was going to hurt him." Kazashi rubbed her back comfortingly, letting her cry into his chest. There was no trace of his normal easy smile. A grim expression had instead taken up residence as he considered the facts that he was given. And he didn't like the picture he was getting. Not one damn bit. Eventfully, Mabuki's sobs had tapered off. Kazashi guided her to the couch as he sat beside her. His almost angry expression had taken her aback. As Kazashi starting to explain his suspicions, her expression slowly changed to outrage. How dare the village treat anyone, especially a child, like that? Mabuki had vowed, right then and there, that Naruto would always have a home, should he want it, at their house. The sound of Sakura's fork scraping on her plate as she finished the last few bites brought Mabuki out of her remembrance. "Sakura dear, I also packed 2 breakfast egg sandwiches for Naruto-kun." She handed Sakura a bulging plastic tote. "Make sure he gets them. I also packed a lunch bento for him. You normal bento is in there as well," she instructed. Looking down at her daughter, Mabuki couldn't help the swell of pride that welled up within her at the sight. Bending down slightly, she pulled Sakura in for a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you. I could never ask for a better daughter." After maintaining the warm hug for a few moments, Sakura started to fidget. She loved her parents, but she needed to get going so she could give Naruto his breakfast. As soon as her mother drew back, Sakura grabbed the bag and dashed off, calling over her shoulder, "Thanks for the breakfast, Mom. I'll make sure Naruto-kun gets the food." There wasn't any doubt in her mind that she, Naruto, or Hinata wouldn't pass. Hinata awoke with a sigh. It was graduation day. She still was unsure how to feel about today. On the one hand, she was excited to graduate with Naruto-kun and Sakura-san. But on the other, she wasn't sure that she wasn't good enough to graduate. Her father had spoken to her yesterday and had told her that she, as his eldest daughter and more importantly a Hyuga main branch member, could not fail the test today. Lest she shame the clan. While her father was slightly impressed by her improvements over the last year, it was obvious that he viewed her as weak and useless. The maelstrom of emotions swirling within her killed any appetite she would have had. Remembering what Naruto had offered the night before, she quickly completed her morning routine and then headed towards Naruto's apartment. Naruto was always there for her. Mizuki awoke with his head in a fog. He had been up late last night going over exactly how graduation had to go. It was his responsibility to make sure the demon never passed the exam. The fox had shown enough worrying growth and fighting ability to make the council nervous. Mizuki smirked. The little shit wouldn't know what hit him until it was far too late. A victorious expression stretched across his face as he considered what he would be gaining after today. The demon would be dead, He would be far away from this accursed place, and he would be a ninja of Otogakure. The black-haired man's elation died as he remembered the events that had led him to come up with this plan. It had all started with the little demon getting medical attention. The bitch, Mebuki Haruno, had actually healed the demon fox. They had sent a few ninja to her house to explain why you didn't heal the fox. But something had gone wrong. The ninja they had sent just vanished without a trace. So they sent a few more experienced shinobi. They too disappeared. It was at that point they simply stopped trying to contact the Haruno family. Some powerful shadowy figure was protecting them. Eventually, through several months of careful manipulation, they had found out that it wasn't the Hokage, Sarutobi. That had both relieved and scared them all. For while it was good that the Hiruzen didn't know, it meant that someone else was stalking in the shadows. Mizuki shrugged. Once he was gone, his allies in this village could burn for all cared. Naruto awoke with a happy smile on his face. His nightmares automatically shoved to the back of his mind in light of the excitement of what was happening today. He was going to graduate with Sakura-chan and Hinata-chan. His first step in becoming the strongest ninja ever was nearly complete. Naruto hurried to complete his morning routine so he could meet Sakura and Hinata. The Kyuubi chuckled to itself as he watched his container hurry about. The demon fox considered the massive amounts of changes that had happened to Naruto in the last 3 years. He had gained 2 friends, or at least both it and Naruto assumed that they were friends, given that they really weren't sure exactly what a friend was. Yes, Kyuubi decided after a moment's contemplation and quick perusal of its container's memories, the Sakura girl and the Hinata girl were Naruto's friends. In addition, Naruto had been invited to the Sakura girl's home to eat on multiple occasions. The healthy food had benefited his jailer immensely. His jailer now stood about average with all of the other children, instead of being significantly shorter than them all. His container had also gained quite a bit of muscle for his age, outstripping most of the others. Only traces of his baby fat still lingered after all the training he had done. All in all, the Kyuubi considered the last 3 years the best years of his little container's life. And, the Kyuubi promised itself, should it be somehow released from Naruto, the Haruno household, as well as Hinata herself, would be spared its wrath. Just as Naruto was finishing up his instant ramen, which contrary to the name wasn't actually instant, he heard a knock on his door. Old, painful memories ghosted through his mind for the briefest of moments before the specific knock pattern registered. It was Hinata-chan. Naruto threw open the door, happily greeting his friend. Hinata-chan. Hello. I wasn't expecting to see you this early. Ready to graduate? Hinata sighed inaudibly and relaxed. She had missed this. Naruto's easy confidence and warmth. Hello Naruto-kun. Now that I am with you, I know I can pass. Naruto's answering grin gave her the strangest feeling in her stomach, almost as if a bunch of butterflies started to flutter about inside. After a moment's consideration, she realized that it wasn't a bad sensation. It was, perhaps, the complete opposite of bad. After Naruto grabbed his jacket and locked the door to his small apartment, the 2 prospective ninja headed towards the academy. They were just about halfway towards the academy when they met up with Sakura. Here Naruto. Sakura thrust the still warm egg sandwiches into his hands. I brought some food for your breakfast. Mom made it. Thanks Sakura-chan. Naruto shot a massive smile at Sakura before digging into the delicious sandwich. Sakura temporarily froze as a hint of red flushed on her face. That smile had looked really good on Naruto's face. Shaking her head to rid of the odd thought, she hurried forward to join her friends. Together the 3 ninja hopefuls walked towards the academy, and their first steps towards achieving their goals. Naruto grinned as he chatted with Sakura and Hinata as they neared the academy. Today was going to be the best day ever. He was going to graduate with Sakura-chan and Hinata-chan, and they were going to be on a team together. It was going to be great. Hinata was quiet as Naruto talked. Watching Naruto as he happily gestured to herself and Sakura during the dramatic part of his latest training session, she felt an idea form within her. As he wrapped up the story with a sudden exclamation of noise and spread arms, Hinata made her decision. Sakura-san, may I talk to you privately for a moment? Hinata requested during the lull in conversation, her voice firm and careful. Sakura blinked and looked over at Hinata. The Hyuga looked serious, far more serious than normal. Sure, Sakura answered, confusion filling her tone. When do you want to talk? Before the academy today. Hinata answered, hoping that Naruto would get the hint. She could never bring herself to tell Naruto to leave them, so her blonde friend and crush would need to leave them to talk in private out of his own volition. Turning to Naruto, who was looking at them both in slight bewilderment, Sakura ordered, Naruto. We'll meet you at the academy. Hinata and I have to talk about something alone. Oh, okay. Naruto's shoulders slumped ever so slightly for the briefest of seconds. And then just as quickly, a wide smile slid across his face. Okay, I'll meet you at the academy. He nodded, the wide grin firmly fixed. Spinning on his heel, the blonde Uzumaki rushed off towards the academy. Both girls watched Naruto head off. As soon as he disappeared from their sight, Sakura turned to Hinata, visible anger flaring within her green eyes. What do you want? It was more of a demand than a question. It better be worth it. We just made Naruto-kun sad. Well, Hinata fought back the tears at the thought of making Naruto sad. She had seen the fake grin on his face. You know how Naruto doesn't really have anyone but the two of us as friends? Sakura nodded, some of her fierceness vanishing. Seeing Sakura's nod, Hinata took a deep breath and continued, her voice growing more and more passionate, we need to become friends ourselves. For Naruto-kun, he does not deserve to have to choose between us. Brow furrowing in thought, Sakura considered Hinata's words. While the pale-eyed girl had made several good points, there was something about it that almost made Sakura protest. The pink-haired girl's eyes widened as she realized what the issue was. She wanted Naruto-kun all to herself. Opening her mouth to refuse Hinata's offer of friendship, a mental replay of Hinata's words caught her attention. He does not deserve to have to choose between us. Sakura's mouth closed with a snap. That was the point, wasn't it? How could she call herself Naruto's best friend if she refused to ever think of what he wanted? And she knew what Naruto wanted. He just wanted his friends to get along. Setting her jaw, Sakura turned to Hinata. I'll be your friend. For Naruto-kun. Sakura paused, considering. And you're a pretty decent person anyway. I would have eventually became your friend anyway. The comment was begrudging, but honest. Hinata relaxed in visible relief, a small smile breaking out. Okay, let's go find Naruto and cheer him back up. Right, Sakura-chan? Sakura nodded firmly, her path set. Right, let's go, Hinata-chan. Naruto skidded to a stop outside of the academy. The run had served to clear his head, and had allowed him to decide to believe that Sakura and Hinata had simply wanted to talk about something without him. They would catch up to him later. Naruto took a step forward before freezing mid-step. What if they wanted him to wait for them outside of the academy? Placing his foot back down, the Uzumaki moved over to the wrought iron gate of the academy. He would wait for his best friends here. About 10 minutes later, his ears perked up at the familiar sounds of Sakura and Hinata conversing. He pushed himself off of the wall next to the gate and jogged eagerly towards the pair. As he got closer, the two girls visibly brightened as they spotted him moving towards them. Sakura-chan, Hinata-chan, Naruto burst out, unable to contain himself any longer. Are you all done with your talk? Yes, Hinata-chan and I are done. Sakura called back. Opening her mouth, she hesitated as guilt swamped her when Naruto joined their group. Turning to fully face Naruto, she bowed her head. I'm sorry for sending you away, Naruto-kun. I didn't do it to make you sad. It's all right. Naruto waved away Sakura's apology, silently wondering why she was bowing to someone like him. I realized that sometimes you have to talk about something that I'm not supposed to hear. Ducking his head as a secret hope welled up once again, he couldn't stop the words from tumbling out. So it's Hinata-chan, does that mean you and Hinata-chan are friends? Mentally chastising himself for pushing, he awaited her reply, the hope still flickering within. Any doubts that lingered in Sakura's or Hinata's mind over their new friendship was wiped away by Naruto's poorly hidden hopeful expression. Yes, Naruto-kun, Sakura-chan and I are friends now. Hinata nodded. So now you will never have to choose between us ever again. She added mentally. Naruto's blindingly happy smile threatened to rival the sun in brilliance, filled the two girls with a sense of accomplishment. Now, Naruto spun on his heel and thrust a hand towards the academy. Let's go kick this exam's ass. Hell yeah. Sakura pounded her right fist into her left palm. Let's do this. Let's do it. Hinata forgot the proper Hyuga decorum for a moment. Together, we can do this. The classroom was ordered chaos. All of the students were talking amongst themselves, realizing that this could possibly be the last time they would see each other. There were several girls shouting at each other in the front center of the room, unable to decide who would have the supreme honor of sitting next to Sasuke Uchiha. Sakura recognized her former friend Ino as one of the ones that was edging closer to the seat closest to Sasuke. With a strange sense of abrupt realization, she realized that she didn't feel the need to try to sit close to Sasuke. Shrugging off the strange feeling, the pink-haired girl headed to the seat next to Naruto, joining his and Hinata's speculations on what the test ahead could be comprised of. After another few minutes, Iruka entered the classroom along with Mizuki. Iruka's shouts for quiet was all but ignored by the class. He waited for another minute before taking a deep breath. Beside him, Mizuki plugged his ears. "All right, sit down and shut up." Iruka's head grew to a massive size for the briefest moment. "It's time to start class." The class slowly quieted and Mizuki removed his fingers from his ears. Now, Iruka continued, his head and voice back to normal. "Here's how we are going to do the test today. First, we are going to take a written exam. After that, we are going to be testing your kunai and shuriken throwing skills. Next, we will be pitting each of you against one another graded sparring matches. Once those are completed, we will be testing your skill with the Bunshin no Jutsu, the Kawarimi no Jutsu, and the Henge no Jutsu. Mizuki-sensei," Iruka indicated Mizuki beside him, "will be helping me administer these exams." And with those words, the Konoha Genin exams started. After the written test had been completed, the class headed out to the grounds behind the academy. Starting off the students off alphabetically, Iruka called the prospective Genins up one by one. As he grew closer to Sakura's name, her palms started to sweat. Naruto put his hand on her shoulder as he leaned close and whispered, "You got this, Sakura-chan." Bolstered by Naruto's words, Sakura stepped forward as Iruka called, "Haruno, Sakura." Sakura stepped up to the throwing line. She took 2 deep breaths. Clutching the provided kunai in her hand, she took a half step forward. Her hand snapped forward repeatedly as she threw the kunai towards the target. 7 out of 10. Iruka totaled up the points. "Not bad." He congratulated, "Keep it up for the shuriken portion." Sakura grinned as she heard Naruto shout out a congratulation on her score. "You bet." Sakura quickly took the offered shuriken and stepped towards the throwing line again. She sent the shurikens buzzing down the range towards the target. A solid 7.5 out of 10. Iruka proudly marked the numbers on Sakura's sheet before heading out to retrieve the thrown weapons. Behind him, Sakura was welcomed back into her group by Naruto and Hinata, all three celebrating Sakura's skillful performance. "Hyuga, Hinata." Hinata towed the throwing line after accepting the offered kunai. Naruto's unending confidence had rubbed off on her, and her hand moved forward gracefully as she threw the kunai before she lost the temporarily gained confidence. The kunai sped down the range towards the target one by one. 7 out of 10. "Well done." Iruka congratulated, making sure to let the young Hyuga know that she had done well. He couldn't do anything about her home life, but here, he would do what he could. Confidence in herself bubbled up, ever so slightly, as Hinata heard her teacher's words along with Naruto's shouted encouragement, daring to believe them for a moment. She took the offered shuriken. The young Hyuga was almost graceful as she sent the shuriken buzzing towards the targets. 7 out of 10 once again. "Good job, Hinata-san." Iruka smiled down at his student, proud of the immense strides she had made in the last 3 years. He watched her join her group of friends amidst their congratulations. It was times like this that made all the late nights grading papers and the early mornings worth it. "You guys did really good." Naruto couldn't help but beam at his friend's success. She and Sakura had grown strong since the time he had first met them, and he couldn't be happier. Sakura grinned. "Well, Naruto-kun, make sure you don't do something stupid like drop the kunai." The teasing lilt struck all three as the three attempted to keep straight faces as they thought of the nigh impossible chance that Naruto would screw up a physical test. They lasted 4 heartbeats before breaking down into stifled giggles. "Uchiha, Sasuke." The black-haired boy stalked to the throwing line, grabbing the kunai as he stepped up to the line. He threw several kunai at one time, hitting the target each time. 9.75 out of 10. Mizuki noted, taking care to raise his voice just enough to carry over to the demon child. There was a chance that it would demoralize the fox, which would make things easier. The Uchiha had grouped his kunai slightly too far apart, missing the inner target with the final weapon by a scant inch. Sasuke grunted, the sound almost bored. But it is not good enough. Brother would have done better. I had to do better. He swiped the shuriken from Mizuki and quickly threw them, once again unleashing several at a time. 9.5 out of 10. Mizuki congratulated, subtly casting a glance over at Naruto. The blonde demon didn't even seem to be concerned. It was comforting to watch Sasuke smirk at Naruto as he passed the blonde. It wasn't hard to stoke the fires of dislike when it came to the Uchiha. Driven by the desire to grow strong enough to kill his brother, Sasuke was ridiculously easy to manipulate. All it took was a few well-placed words, and the seed of hate flourished on its own. Uzumaki, Naruto. Good luck Naruto-kun. Hinata whispered. Yeah, good luck Naruto-kun. Sakura nodded, ready to see her best friend show everyone how strong he was. Naruto grinned and strode up to the throwing line, snagging the kunai as he went. As soon as his foot touched the line, his hands blurred. The 10 kunai rocketed down range, slamming into the target. 10 out of 10. Iruka blinked in shock. He knew Naruto was good, but he didn't know that Naruto was this good. Naruto chuckled warmly as he heard Sakura shout congratulations and Hinata's softly spoken words of encouragement. He snagged the shuriken while stepping towards the line. This time before he even reached the throwing line, his hands blurred once again. The sharp thuds of the shuriken hitting the target reached their ears a moment later. 10 out of 10. Iruka announced amidst the whispers of the class. Naruto was welcomed back to his group, all three celebrating their successes. Sasuke scowled fiercely. How dare the lowly clan-less loser do better than him? He was an Uchiha, the last Uchiha. An emotion, both familiar and painful, edged at his mind as he watched the three friends laugh together. An idea began to form in Sasuke's mind. He knew how he would get back at the Uzumaki. Soon the throwing portion finished, and it was time for the sparring matches. All right, Iruka began, it's time for the sparring matches. I'm going to lay down a few ground rules. First, no killing blows. Second, it's taijutsu only. So no non-hand-to-hand combat techniques. This also means that no weapons are allowed. He took a breath before continuing. To win the match you must either knock your opponent out of the ring. He pointed to the painted white ring surrounding the 40-foot sparring circle. Or you force them to submit. You may challenge someone, but you do not have to. If you do challenge someone, they do not have to accept. Sasuke's voice rang out the moment Iruka finished. I will fight the Uzumaki. A hush fell on the class. This was more than just a simple challenge. Sasuke was the top student. Naruto was the student with the worst grades. But no one could deny the blonde's effectiveness in combat. Sakura froze. She remembered what Ino had said to her just over 6 months ago. Sakura entered the classroom to see Sasuke lean back with a satisfied smirk on his face. In contrast, Naruto had a slightly depressed air about him. 3 seconds later, the depressed air disappeared as he hid his feelings deep within with unconscious ease. Turning from one boy to another, Sakura hesitated, unsure where to go or how to feel. Confused anger washed through her with the knowledge that someone had made fun of Naruto, but that someone was Sasuke. Torn, she didn't notice Ino walk up to her until the blonde girl spoke. You're going to have to choose. Ino pointed out. Huh? Sakura blinked in confusion. What are you talking about? Ino snorted and rolled her eyes. For as big as your forehead is, you don't get it, do you? Blue eyes pierced Sakura's confused green eyes. You're going to have to choose between Sasuke-kun and Naruto Baka. They believe different philosophies and are going to eventually fight over them. I accept. Naruto's voice rang out, as he strode towards the marked-off sparring ring. Sasuke quickly followed. When he stepped into the ring, his fangirls practically deafened those near them. After both students entered the ring, they made their way to the opposite sides of the ring. It was like he was watching a building on fire, helpless to stop the carnage about to happen, but unable to look away. Iruka swallowed, wetting his suddenly dry throat before starting the match. All right, keep it clean you two. Are both fighters ready? When both boys gave their assent, the teacher took a deep breath. Ready? Hajime. Neither boy moved. Do you hear that, Dobi? Sasuke smirked. Do you hear them cheering my name? Calling for me to beat you down? He moved for the verbal kill. And who is cheering for you? Just two pathetic girls that are pretending to kunoichi. Any further taunts that Sasuke had planned were shoved back down his throat as a heavy, oppressive presence cloaked the rain. It was as if the very air itself gained 20 pounds heavier, which pressed down on the last Uchiha, grinding away at his mind and will. What did you say? Naruto inquired, his voice a deadly calm. His eyes betrayed the furious anger barely kept in check. Did you just call Sakura-chan and Hinata-chan weak? Sasuke paled, but stood his ground, if only by the barest margins. Why yes, I said that they are weak. He panted, attempting to steel himself against the oppressive atmosphere. It was almost like the time when he had faced Itachi. Naruto shot forward, his fist burying itself into Sasuke's stomach. The Uchiha wheezed out a choked gasp as all of the air in his lungs was forcibly pushed out. He had no time to react as Naruto reached forward with his other hand and grabbed his shirt, bodily tossing the shocked Uchiha into the center of the ring before leaping after the falling him. Slamming into the ground with a groan, Sasuke looked up as a human-sized shadow descended. Rolling to the left, he dodged Naruto's stomp, the force behind the attack raising a cloud of dust which obscured the two fighters. The dirt burned and clogged Sasuke's eyes as he spun around, looking for the Uzumaki he had once looked down upon. A savage jab to his jaw sent him stumbling back, arms waving as he tried to keep his balance. Planting his foot, the last Uchiha swung, hoping to connect with something, anything. Naruto hammered Sasuke's swing out of the way and once again buried his fist in Sasuke's stomach. The black-haired youth heaved. Grabbing the back of the Uchiha's descending head, Naruto brought it to meet his rising knee. Sasuke's head snapped back, his ears ringing and his eyes aching. He stumbled backwards and out of the dust cloud. The agony behind his eyes bloomed. Unable to catch himself, Sasuke dropped to one knee. Go Naruto-kun. Sakura's voice snapped Naruto out of his angry, focused instincts. Turning towards the voice, he spotted Sakura-chan and Hinata-chan. Both girls were cheering for him. It was baffling, but nice. Riding on the warmth that bubbled up at their words, he let a grin surface. Movement from Sasuke drew him back to the fight. Sasuke staggered to his feet. Despite having been hit several times, there was energy pulsing inside him. Even though every part of him ached, it was a good ache. This time, the last Uchiha decided, he would not be thrown aside like a child. Never again. I am an Uchiha. The burning in his eyes had decreased to a mild irritation. I must win this. Oddly enough, the world seemed to be moving slower. I will defeat you, and then brother. He flexed his hands. Naruto surged towards his opponent. As he got closer, he noticed that Sasuke's eyes had changed. The last Uchiha's iris had changed to a bright red color, and a single black tomo rotated the pupils slowly. And when Naruto swung, Sasuke dodged. Both of the fighters leapt back, assessing each other before charging once again. A quick exchange of fists and kicks occurred before they broke apart. Naruto's dark blue eyes met Sasuke's bright red ones. Then he blurred. Sasuke was wholly unprepared as Naruto seemed to appear in front of him, the Uzumaki's right hand drawn back. A split second later, his palm slammed into the Uchiha's chest, catapulting Sasuke back over 24 feet. Sasuke rolled to his feet, ready to defeat his foe. As he prepared to take a step forward, the stunned silence brought him up short. His eyes were drawn to the line 4 feet in front of him. I lost? Sasuke stared at the line. Distantly he heard Naruto be declared the winner of the match by a shocked Iruka. Something dark took root in the Uchiha's heart. Hate began to grow and fester in Sasuke's soul towards the Uzumaki. I'll take you down you worthless, clan-less, brainless, talentless loser. Sasuke vowed, his eyes flashing as he glared at the bright-eyed blonde who had the gall to turn his back to him. An invisible weight lifted off Sakura's shoulders as Naruto walked towards her and Hinata. She understood now. Well, Ino pig, I made my choice. And I don't regret it for a second. My Naruto-kun didn't need to try to demoralize his opponent to win. Tossing a glance over at the shocked and distraught blonde Yamanaka, Sakura shook her head. You can keep Sasuke. Relief flooded Hinata as Naruto walked towards them. While she had never doubted that he would win, Sasuke awakening the Sharingan, the fabled copy wheel eye, had caused a spike of worry to shoot through her. But her favorite blonde had easily won. The small vicious portion of her was glad that the Uchiha had lost so badly. Perhaps now he would leave Naruto alone. The rest of the matches seemed dull in comparison to the first exciting match, much to the disappointment of the gathered students. It is worthy for note, however, that both Hinata and Sakura were able to easily force a submission from their opponents. The other potentially interesting matches of note were the separate matches of Kiba Inuzuka and Shino Aburame. Kiba had simply beat down his opponent in an all-out slugfest, while Shino had used his family's signature style to use his opponent's strength against them. The rest of the mostly unremarkable matches ended quickly. Soon, it was time to head back inside the classroom for the final test. After the students filed back into the classroom, Iruka once again called for order. Having learned, the students reluctantly quieted. "Welcome to the third part of the exam. Mizuki and I will be splitting you all into 2 separate groups for ease of testing. Each student will be called by myself or Mizuki to one of the examination rooms to be tested alone. Mizuki would be starting at the bottom of the list while I would be starting at the top." "Ashida, Aizen, Hinata-chan," Sakura whispered, turning to the girl behind her, "I just realized something." They had both been assigned to Iruka's line, while Naruto had been assigned to Mizuki. Both Sakura and Hinata knew that Mizuki Menba wouldn't grade Naruto fairly, but with the scores that Naruto had gotten during the second exam, the teacher couldn't just fail Naruto because he didn't like him, right? Seeing that she had Hinata's attention, the pink-haired girl continued, working hard to keep her voice quiet. "The 3 jutsus we are being tested on are the body replacement jutsu, the transformation jutsu, and the clone jutsu." Hinata paled, her already light skin whitening as she realized what the issue was. Naruto was simply incapable of performing the clone jutsu. No matter how much or how little he poured into the technique, the clones looked sickly and weak at best. At the worst, his clones simply fell over and died, right then and there. Sakura turned towards the line at the other end of the classroom, intent on warning Naruto. But it was too late. "Uzumaki, Naruto." Mizuki silently congratulated himself on not letting his hate for the demon fox bleed into his voice when he called its human name. As the demon happily walked into the exam room, the teacher barely managed to hide the glee at the thought of its depressed face when it failed. Not, of course, that it would be having that expression for long. Or any expression for that matter. Naruto grinned to himself as he cancelled the transformation jutsu. He had always wondered why people always had issues with that technique. All you had to do was charge your chakra and concentrate on who you wanted to become. His happy wonderings were abruptly shattered by Mizuki-sensei's next words. "Now perform the Bunshin no Jutsu." Naruto carefully performed each hand sign, double-checking that his fingers were exactly in the right position before moving on to the next one. "Please work this time, just this once." Squeezing his eyes shut as he channeled chakra to complete the technique, he held his breath. After a minute, he carefully peeked his left eye open. What he saw filled him with despair. He was surrounded by 10 corpses. Despite the fact that the clone jutsu only created illusionary copies, he had somehow created dead illusionary copies of himself. No 2 clones were alike. One had been stabbed, while another burned. Still another was still, almost peaceful in death. On and on it went, each clone a different monument to his failure. Naruto's head dropped, hanging in shame. How am I supposed to grow strong now? His slow, sad walk halted as Mizuki's compassionate voice stopped his thoughts. "I'm sorry, Naruto. I know how much you wanted to pass. Graduating would have meant so much to you. But I think I can still help you." Mizuki's tone was nothing but pure sincerity. "There's a second secret test to become genin. I can tell you about that if you still want to graduate with your friends. Hope can be a powerful drug, dulling common sense and caution." Sakura and Hinata had finished their tests quickly. While they had not gotten a perfect score, they had easily passed the final exam to become genin. However, as more and more time passed, they grew ever more worried as they watched the closed door Naruto had disappeared into to take his test. After what seemed like an eternity, the door opened. Mizuki stepped out, his expression properly schooled in an expression of sadness. He walked to the teacher's desk and announced, being careful to keep the utter satisfaction out of his tone, I regret to inform you all that Naruto Uzumaki had failed the ninjutsu portion of the test. He utterly failed the test. He has gone home in shame. The mocking laughter of the class warmed Mizuki's heart. Basking in the noise while also maintaining his mask of false sorrow, the man far too distracted to notice the veins surrounding Hinata's eyes bulge out as she activated her Byakugan, anger threatening to fracture her Hyuga mask. Nor did he notice Sakura shaking with barely suppressed rage. Hinata trembled with the effort of suppressing her emotions. Several strong emotions warred within her. As anger was slowly winning, her eyes suddenly caught sight of a note within Mizuki's pocket. All anger left her. The note was simply addressed to Sakura-chan and Hinata-chan, in Naruto's messy scrawl. Hinata elbowed Sakura and leaned close to whisper in her ear. Hinata's whisper broke through Sakura's mental angry rants and fantasies of charging down and decking Mizuki for his words. Sakura-chan, there's a note to us from Naruto-kun in Mizuki's pocket. Sakura stopped shaking. She glanced at Hinata. All it took was one glance for them to form the basis of a plan. The plan was simple. Follow Mizuki and take Naruto's letter. It was rightfully theirs, after all. Mizuki chuckled to himself as he made his way to the forest. His plan was brilliant. He had directed the demon to steal the scroll of seals from the Hokage's office. He hadn't expected the little fox to actually succeed, but as the alarms wailed in the village, it was apparent that the demon had succeeded somehow. Perhaps some sort of demon magic? Mizuki allowed himself a malicious laugh as he mentally prepared for the second, and most enjoyable, part of his plan. It was time to find the demon fox and relieve it of its burden. Phew. Naruto wiped the sweat off his brow. It's tough learning a new jutsu. He grinned, but it had paid off. He had done it. Tilting his head down again to study the bright red label on the outside of the scroll of seals, he couldn't help but wonder. Why does it say that these are forbidden? He had learned the shadow clone jutsu, and it wasn't that hard to learn. There had been some kind of warning on the technique, but he was feeling fine. Now to wait for a teacher so he could graduate and be on a team with Sakura-chan and Hinata-chan. Life was good. Iruka sprinted towards the forest. He had to find Naruto before the Anbu found him. Why did you steal the scroll of sealing, Naruto? Why would you do that? What were you thinking? Iruka pushed more chakra into his legs and became a blur to the untrained eye. After a few moments of sprinting and jumping, he reached the edge of the forest. As he looked over the vast extent of the forest laid out before him, he felt his heart sink. How could he find Naruto in all of this mess? Iruka heaved out a heavy sigh before straightening. Well, it looks like I'll just have to search the entire thing then. Iruka nodded to himself. I can't let one of my students down. The thought echoed in his mind as he pushed even more chakra into his legs to increase his speed as he sped off. Naruto was startled from his studying of the next technique by Iruka's angered shout. Naruto, there you are. Iruka skidded to a halt after he landed in the small clearing Naruto had taken refuge in. As Iruka opened his mouth to explain to Naruto how badly he had messed up, the excited Uzumaki bounded up to his sensei. I did it, Iruka-sensei. I passed the test. The blonde boy grinned. I learned the technique just like the secret secondary genin test required. Naruto scooped up the scroll of seals. I suppose you'll want this back now, huh? Now that he was a genin, he would be getting on the same team as Hinata-chan and Sakura-chan for sure. What? Iruka stammered. What are you talking about? What test? Naruto tilted his head to the side. You know, Iruka-sensei. The secret genin test that requires you to steal the big scroll from the Hokage's office and learn a technique before you are caught? Iruka was stunned. Why did Naruto think this was some kind of test? He then went cold as he heard Mizuki's voice. Very good. Now just pass over the scroll of sealing so you can get your headband. Like the final piece to a puzzle, it all fell into place for Iruka. Mizuki was one of the people that hated Naruto. And he must have failed Naruto on purpose to get him desperate enough to steal the scroll. Hearing Naruto take a step forward, Iruka spun to face his student. Naruto, don't give the scroll to Mizuki. He just wants the scroll. There isn't a secret genin test. Naruto stopped, confused. He just didn't understand. Why would Mizuki-sensei give him a fake test? Why should he believe you, Iruka? After all, you hate him too. I mean, he is what killed your parents after all. Mizuki then turned to look at the shocked blonde. Don't you want to know why everyone hates you? Uruka's eyes widened as Mizuki's words registered. No, don't tell him. He knew what that knowledge would do to young Naruto. It's forbidden by the Hokage. Mizuki's mocking laughter was the only answer to Uruka's plea. Guess what? Mizuki began, satisfaction practically oozing off each word. The Kyuubi that attacked 12 years ago didn't die. As he spoke, he carefully reached behind his back and began pushing a slow trickle of chakra into the storage seal built into his jacket. Instead, it was sealed. And you know what it was sealed into? He paused, savoring the moment. The shape of a baby. You are the Kyuubi. You're the murderous demon fox. Naruto froze, his mind repeating Mizuki's words over and over. He really was a demon then? He had killed all those people, didn't he? Mizuki, seeing that his words had their intended effect, unsealed a massive shuriken from the storage seal. Hefting it, he sent it spinning towards the stunned Uzumaki. Uruka, spotting the danger, tackled his sunny-haired student out of the lethal projectile's path. The impact knocked Naruto out of his shocked stupor. I'm the Kyuubi? Naruto's small, endlessly sad voice echoed in the clearing. Uruka's heart wrenched as he watched the small boy stare down at his trembling hands. He didn't hear any of the malicious terrible power from Naruto. All he heard was a small boy who now thought he knew why he was hated. He watched as Naruto slowly stood up. Naruto's heart was heavy, so heavy. He was a monster. A demon. He was a killer. As Mizuki readied another giant shuriken, he didn't move. It was better this way. Sakura-chan and Hinata-chan didn't deserve to be associated with a demon. Mizuki hurled the shuriken. The sound of the shuriken piercing flesh sounded out in the clearing. Naruto's eyes flew open. Why didn't it hurt? Uruka stood facing him with his arms outstretched. Naruto saw a pained grimace cross his teacher's face, before it smoothed, all traces of the pain vanishing. Uruka let a gentle smile enter his face as he looked down at his student. Naruto, Uruka reached out and placed a hand on the blonde's shoulder. You aren't the Kyuubi. You're a Jinchuriki, not the fox demon, just its jailer. He paused for a moment, letting the truth sink into Naruto's desperate ears. Now go. Mizuki is a traitor to the village and can't get the scroll of sealing. Uruka, seeing Naruto's hesitation, urged him again, go. I'll be fine. Naruto sprinted off, pausing at the tree line before continuing out of sight. I'm surprised. Mizuki commented, I thought that you hated the demon too. I do. Uruka replied, as he carefully pulled the massive shuriken out of his back, but Naruto isn't the demon fox. Uruka let a proud smile cross his face as he continued, Naruto is a hero. And I look forward to seeing him grow into the powerful ninja that I know he can be. Mizuki scowled. This wasn't going to plan. Well then, he snarled, anger and hate twisting his features into something familiar yet unrecognizable. I guess I'll just have to kill you and track down the fox myself. He launched himself at the Herd Academy teacher. If you like the Kyuubi so much, you can die for it. Uruka barely dodged Mizuki's charge. Pain spiked through his back from the wound caused by the giant shuriken. Staggering, the teacher fell to one knee. His head snapped to the side from Mizuki's follow-up kick. The knee almost lifted Uruka back onto his feet. A thrust kick slammed him against a tree 10 feet away. Uruka wasn't able to hold in his cry of pain as his lacerated back slammed into the unforgiving tree trunk. His vision blurred as he looked up at the man he thought was his friend. Mizuki readied another giant shuriken. Uruka closed his eyes. I'm sorry, Tsubaki-chan. Mizuki isn't the man either of us thought he was. I wish I could go back and try harder to win your hand. May you find peace, Tsubaki-chan. The sound of metal clanging on metal brought him out of his thoughts. There was no pain. Uruka's eyes shot open to behold the most amazing sight. Naruto stood in front of him. His student's arm was outstretched, clutching a kunai, having just deflected the shuriken away from his sensei. Dark blue eyes glared at Mizuki. You know, Naruto's voice was a dark, deadly calm. I should thank you, Mizuki. He paused before continuing, without you, I would be still wondering why they all hated me. I know now, thanks to you, but. His eyes and tone hardened. You tried to kill one of my friends. You tried to kill someone precious to me. The crushing presence of Naruto's killing intent crashed down on Mizuki. And I won't allow that. Flaring his own chakra as much as he could, Mizuki managed to force out a chuckle. And what are you going to do exactly? I'm a Chunin, and you're nothing but a failure. Naruto's noise of amusement turned his veins to ice. You're right, but that's just one me. What if there was 2? 5? 10? 100? The Jinchuriki brought his hands up into a cross symbol. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The name of the technique rang out like a death knell. For solitary moment, nothing changed. Then, everything changed. White smoke enveloped the trees and ground. When the smoke faded a moment later, it was awe-inspiring. Clones of Naruto covered every inch of the surrounding area, and they all wore the same deadly calm expression. The Uzumaki simply pointed at Mizuki. The army charged. Mizuki blocked the first attack out of pure reflex, despite knowing that the clone technique was nothing more than an illusion. Shock flooded his mind when he felt the impact of the clone's fist on his arm. These weren't illusions, they were solid clones. Mizuki steeled himself. Even if there was more of the demon, it didn't change the fact that the demon was not even a genin. The traitor counterattacked, his fist slamming into the clone's stomach. After receiving the hit, it burst into smoke. Confidence built within. It took was one blow to take the clone out. He could do this. He would survive and kill the demon. Taking another 2 shadow clones out with 3 kunai, Mizuki wove through a dozen hand signs and then spat out a half-dozen water bullets. They wouldn't do much damage, but they didn't need to. Spinning on his heel, he took out the clone sneaking behind him with a slash from his kunai. Iruka watched the battle with undisguised amazement. Had known that Naruto was good, but he didn't think Naruto was capable of this. He wondered how much the chakra Naruto had, considering high-ranking Jonin had trouble making more than 10 shadow clones. His attention was drawn to what he assumed was the original Naruto. The Uzumaki was simply watching Mizuki as he fought his clones. Whenever the number of shadow clones ran low, there would be a puff of smoke, and more would charge towards their target. Mizuki was reaping a mighty toll on the clones, but with each new wave, it became less and less of a one-sided battle. With each new wave, the clones learned. Mizuki swung a fist at another of the blasted shadow clones, fully expecting it to die like the others. The clone ducked, the traitor's fist grazing its spiky hair. A palm slammed into the former teacher's chest, hurling him back. The follow-up punch shattered the log that replaced the teacher. Mizuki gasped for air as he crouched in the shadows. That had been a close call. Had it not been for his split-second decision to swap places with a log, he would have caught the second attack and been severely injured, if not killed outright. A sudden throw hurled him back into the original clearing. As Mizuki tumbled to his feet, he spun around, looking around for his attacker. The demon emerged from the forest, a dark smirk fixed on its face. Why so surprised, Sen? A terrible smile exposed sharpened teeth, say? Naruto questioned, his dark amusement fading after a moment. Killing intent almost crushed Mizuki into the ground. The Jinchuriki's blue eyes darkened, hints of glowing red burning like embers. You're not going to hurt anyone ever again. Naruto's voice grew deeper, more monstrous. If I must become a demon, his hands flexed and he stalked towards Mizuki. If I must become a monster. Blonde locks partially hid glowing eyes. If I must become a killer, I gladly accept that price to protect all of my precious people. Naruto blurred. Mizuki snapped a kick towards the charging Jinchuriki. Naruto slid to the side of the kick, and his right palm smashed into the leg's knee, snapping it with a crack. The Uzumaki's left fist slammed into Mizuki's ribs, cracking them with a meaty thud. Mizuki fell to his good knee, coughing blood. The traitor's eyes watered and blurred. Naruto stepped behind Mizuki, his blood thundering in his ears. Even though the adrenaline was making clear thoughts difficult, he knew that Mizuki wouldn't stop until he hurt Iruka-sensei. And what if he decided to hurt Sakura-chan or Hinata-chan? Never, Naruto vowed, not while I still breathe. Naruto gripped Mizuki's head, fingers digging into the man's skull, and with a savage jerk, twisted. The wet snap of Mizuki's neck snapping echoed through the forest. The thud of the lifeless body hitting the ground seemed to go on forever. Iruka stared. Had that just happened? Had Naruto, innocent, naive Naruto, just killed? The teacher blinked several times. The scene in front of him never changed. So it was true then. One of his best students had just taken their first kill. Shaking his shock away, Iruka called out to his student. "En Naruto?" He cursed the hesitance in his voice. Are you alright? Naruto snapped his head to look over in Iruka's direction with a fluid grace reminiscent of a predator. Iruka swallowed at the sight. The Chunin had seen such expressions before. He had seen them on elite jonin who enjoyed killing too much. The teacher prayed with all his heart that Naruto hadn't succumbed to that darker part of himself. Swallowing the lump in his throat, he lowered his voice and smiled at the boy, hiding his real emotions behind a mask. Naruto, it's all right. Mizuki isn't going to hurt anyone anymore. You don't have to fight anymore. Seeing Naruto's normal sky blue eye color start to bleed back into the young Uzumaki's eyes, Iruka carefully levered himself to his knees with an inaudible grunt. It's all right. I'm fine. I'm not going to die. You're fine. You don't need to fight. Naruto blinked, sky blue fully returning. Now that the excitement had passed, Iruka wondered how he could help his student. Naruto had failed the genin test. How could he be with his friends now? Suddenly, with a flash of insight, Iruka knew what to do. Naruto, come over here, Iruka requested. Naruto quickly ran over to Iruka, his eyes checking over Iruka to make sure that he was fine. Iruka's voice sharpened, his back straightening as the ingrained years of being a soldier took over. As the de facto leader of this mission to stop a traitor of the village of Konoha, I bestow upon Naruto Uzumaki the title of genin as a battlefield promotion. Really? Naruto tilted his head, confused. He had failed the test, hadn't he? The knowledge of what he had done edged at his mind, but the Uzumaki stubbornly ignored it. Iruka-sensei was what was important. Yes, Iruka made no effort to hide the proud smile on his face. I always knew you would become genin. I'm proud of you. I look forward to seeing what you do in the future. Someone was proud of him? The thought seemed almost foreign. Why was Iruka proud of him? Any further explanation was cut short by the Hokage's words as he arrived in a swirl of leaves. Indeed, I am quite proud of you, Naruto. Hiruzen paused, letting his words sink in before continuing, but am curious of how one of my ninja ended up dead. His words, although holding a hidden question, did not allow for any refusals. Well, Iruka began carefully, deciding to not include Naruto's dark words or his dark demeanor. It all started when I reached the clearing in the forest. And then you, Hokage-sama, showed up. Iruka winced as he shifted, reopening the wound on his back. Glanced over at Naruto, he assessed his student. The young Uzumaki seemed to be dealing with his first kill, but the instructor knew that it could easily be just a mask, hiding the true feelings frothing inside. His attention was drawn back to the Hokage as he spoke. Now I understand. It is tragic that a fine ninja such as Mizuki has lost his way. Hiruzen sighed, looking for a moment as old as his age, then the Hokage straightened and continued. But he failed in his mission to harm our village. And for that, young Naruto, you have my thanks. He inclined his head slightly in the young genin's direction. Naruto nodded, his mask firmly in place. Thank you, Hokage Dono. Hiruzen seemed to be somehow disappointed by Naruto's professional answer. Genin Uzumaki, I have new orders for you. The Hokage ordered, you're to ensure Iruka-san makes it to the hospital to be checked out. You will then report tomorrow to the Shinobi Academy classroom for team assignment. Naruto bowed, acknowledging his orders. It helped that he was going to do those things anyway. He leaned down to help Iruka stand, and then the two slowly made their way towards Konoha. As the Hokage watched them go, he sighed, the sound heavy. One of the Anbu stepped out from behind the shadows of the nearby tree. What is wrong, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen shook his head before replying, his tone saddened, it's nothing important. Just the idle wishes of an old man. The Hokage then turned away from the view. But now we must get back to the tower. Have Kakashi Hitaki and Kurenai Yuhi come to my office. There has been some changes in team placement. It was with some confusion that Kurenai Yuhi entered the Hokage's tower. As she walked up the stairs towards the Hokage's floor, she wondered what had happened to prompt a change in team placement. She had been given Kiba Inuzuka, the heir to the Inuzuka clan, Hinata Hyuga, daughter of the Hyuga clan's leader, and Shino Aburame, the future successor to the Aburame clan. As she entered the Hokage's office, she spied Kakashi Hitaki in the room, reading his thrice-damned orange smutbook. After the door closed, the Hokage began to speak, gaining both Jonin's attention. Ah, Kurenai, I'm glad you arrived. We have much to discuss. He paused for a moment before continuing. This evening a traitor conspired to steal the scroll of sealing. He would have succeeded if it were not for the brave actions of one genin, Naruto Uzumaki. The pair of jonin stiffened in shock. They both knew about the Uzumaki, and more specifically the rumors surrounding him. Unfortunately, the young Uzumaki had to take the life of the traitor in self-defense. With the updated knowledge of Naruto's fighting skills, I am changing your two teams around. He faced Kakashi, the gray-haired man, putting his book away as the Hokage turned to him. Kakashi, I am removing Naruto Uzumaki and Sakura Haruno from Team 7. You will be gaining Kiba Inuzuka and Shino Aburame in their place. Kakashi opened his mouth to protest, but the Hiruzen had already turned to Kurenai. Kurenai, you will be losing Kiba Inuzuka and Shino Aburame. You will be gaining Naruto Uzumaki and Sakura Haruno in their place. The Hokage faced both of the flabbergasted ninja and steepled his fingers. With Iruka's re-evaluation of Genin Uzumaki's skills, it has become apparent to me that his skills are much higher than originally reported. And because of this, I have the opportunity to make two multi-purpose squads. Team 7 can both be a frontline squad and a tracking squad. Team 8 can also now serve both roles. In addition, with all of Team 7 being clan heirs, they will also be a political team. I have decided to test out a new idea. Team 7 and Team 8 will be training together at least once a week. In addition, they will be each other's backup team. He then gestured to the jonin in front of him. Thoughts? You may speak freely. It only took a few seconds for Kakashi to burst out, why my team? You know why I wanted Naruto. It's simple. The Hokage began, you have the Sharingan. You are the only one able to teach Sasuke Uchiha. In addition, you are, from a political standpoint, well known. But I thought that a growing rivalry between Sasuke and Naruto would benefit them both. Kakashi argued, as well as, he hesitated, that other reason. They can still have their rivalry. Your teams are going to be training together after all. Sarutobi pointed out. Kakashi leaned back, mollified for the moment. The Hokage turned to Kurenai. With Naruto's combat prowess, Hinata's Byakugan, and Sakura's intelligence, they will be a great asset to the village, able to perform in many different roles. Kurenai nodded, understanding the logic behind the Hokage's decision. But she didn't understand why they needed to interact with Team 7 so often. Her eyes widened as a thought occurred to her. Kurenai spoke a moment later, her voice a mix of confusion and slight accusation. Why are you really having our teams work together? The Hokage sighed, before smiling slightly. Ah Kurenai, you were always one to pick up on the subtle details. His tone then hardened. What I'm about to tell you is an S-class secret. Breaking it is punishable by death. He let his words linger in the air before continuing. Naruto Uzumaki is the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed demon fox. And while he has shown no signs of giving into the demon's influence, we cannot afford for it to rampage across our village again. The Sharingan has been known to be able to control the Biju to a certain extent, so that is one of the reasons why your teams are training together. The second reason is both much simpler and more harsh. Out of everyone on your new team, none of them will gain any high rank in their clan, or they aren't part of a major clan at all. Hinata Hyuga is far too timid to ever be made clan head or even co-clan head. Sakura Haruno has no real clan to speak of, the few members have no political clout. Naruto Uzumaki is the village's Jinchuriki. The Hokage did not elaborate. He did not need to. A Jinchuriki was a weapon. It was the trump card that kept the wolves at bay. Still, given what else was true, it was necessary to explain farther, lest Kurenai dig deeper in the mystery that was the last Uzumaki. Sadly, some in the village dislike him, and as such, any political efforts he would make would be stymied. But, Hiruzen smiled, the expression half fabrication and half genuine. Their skills are a great asset to the village, so they will be able to help Team 7 achieve greatness and prestige for the village. Team 8 will live comfortably and perhaps even rise to the ranks of elite jonin. Kurenai went cold at the Hokage's words. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she realized the truth about her genin team. As far as the village was concerned, they existed to help other ninjas become great. The Hokage had prettied it up, but in the end, he never expected them to become great, just like the village. Unfortunately for them, Kurenai took the role of teacher very seriously. In that instant she vowed that she would help her team become great, even if she was the only one who would help them achieve it. Kurenai cast a subtle glance at her fellow Jonin. Hitaki seemed to be accepting of the fact that 3 genin were going to be nothing more than a springboard for his team's greatness. She turned back the Hokage, her eyes searching his for any regrets for the decision he just made. She couldn't find even one. The Hokage waited a few more minutes to see if there would be any more questions. When there was none, he dismissed the 2 Jonin. As the door closed behind the Jonin, Hiruzen let out a deep sigh, his heart heavy. He hated the fact that he was putting Naruto into a squad that wouldn't succeed like the young Uzumaki deserved, but it was for the best. The Hokage knew that any ninja couldn't be more important than the village, but Hiruzen knew that when he died, he would have much to answer for what he had done to the young blonde from Naruto's parents. He honestly dreaded the day that he died, for he knew the answers that he could give about his decisions concerning Naruto wouldn't matter to them. For they were family first, village second. Hiruzen heaved another sigh. He doubted that Naruto would ever forgive him if he ever learned of all the secrets that were purposely kept from him. In the end, you had to choose, family and friends or the village. The Hokage reached for another piece of paperwork to sign. Sakura hurried through her morning routine, needing to go meet Naruto as soon as possible. His note, the one that they had acquired from the alley Mizuki had thrown it into, had told them about a secret secondary genin test. The Pinkette had, after not being about to find Naruto, searched the library for books about secondary tests for genin. The fact that she didn't find even one reference made her worry all the more. She quickly ate her breakfast, grabbed the breakfast and lunch prepared by her mother, and an additional sandwich for Naruto, and sprinted off in the direction of Naruto's apartment. Hinata breezed her early morning rituals. She had hardly gotten any sleep last night after she and Sakura had parted ways. Naruto's note had concerned her greatly, so great in fact, that she had dared to approach her father in order to ask him if he knew any information about the secret genin test. His words had been condescending at best, and cold and hurtful at the worst. She grabbed a quick breakfast from one of the servants before heading to Naruto's home. Naruto awoke with a cry of terror. Panting, he struggled to keep the memories at bay. After he had dropped off Iruka-sensei at the hospital, he had slowly walked back to his apartment. When he had reached it, he had practically collapsed onto his bed, the day's events finally setting in. He had come to the slow realization that while he didn't like killing, he didn't regret killing Mizuki. Mizuki had tried to kill Iruka, and somehow he knew that Mizuki would threaten some of his other precious people someday. That was unacceptable, and though he tried to ignore it, the Jinchuriki couldn't shake the small voice that whispered how easy it had been to destroy his enemy. When he had finally fallen into a restless sleep, he was plagued with nightmares of all the awful times he had been hurt by vengeful crowds. Now that he knew why he was hated, all of the villagers' taunts made so much more terrible sense. Naruto closed his eyes, slowly pushing the memories back into the dark place in his mind, before slamming the vault shut on the memories. It seemed like just as he was opening his eyes once again, that several loud pounding knocks on his front door echoed through his small apartment. Tilting his head to the side, the Uzumaki listened. His eyes widened happily as he recognized the voices outside. It was Sakura-chan and Hinata-chan. Sakura raised her hand to knock on Naruto's door again when it opened. Naruto stood there safe. Instant relief coursed through her as she took in her best friend's unharmed form. Beside her, Hinata did the same. A few moments later, her brain stuttered to a stop for a moment as she registered a very important detail. Naruto wasn't wearing a shirt. Naruto's happy grin combined with his shirtless chest brought a heavy flush to her face, as she turned away. Naruto baka, we were worried about you. The Pinkette forcefully stepped closer, being careful to not let Naruto see her face. Where were you yesterday? It wouldn't do for Naruto to read something into her flushed face that she didn't know about. They were only best friends after all. Hinata was struck dumb. Naruto was fine. And perhaps more importantly, he was shirtless. As she raked his half-clothed form with her eyes, her face grew more and more heated. Soon she feared she might faint from all of the blood rushing to her face. But even still, she couldn't look away. Naruto was puzzled. Why were Sakura-chan's and Hinata-chan's faces red? Had they run all the way to his apartment? If so, they needed a drink. Hydration was important. Sakura-chan, Hinata-chan, come in. I'll get you guys a drink of water. He opened the front door wider before heading to his kitchen. When he came out with 2 glasses of cold water, he was surprised to see Sakura-chan's and Hinata-chan's faces were still red. They really needed to be careful on how hard they pushed themselves. As he set the glasses of water down in front of them, he felt a cool breeze waft from the open nearby window. The sensation of goosebumps pebbling his chest prompted him to look down. He wasn't wearing a shirt. "I'll be right back," Naruto called as he headed towards his bedroom, inadvertently giving both girls a whole new view to admire. Sakura promptly chugged the ice-cold water. When Naruto came back out of his room a few moments later, he was wearing a shirt, much to the girls' simultaneous relief and disappointment. As he sat down, Sakura blurted out with the question she had been nearly bursting to ask. "Where were you yesterday? Does the secret genin test really exist?" It was more of a demand than a question. Well, Naruto began the story, leaving nothing out. There were no secrets between friends after all. "It all started when I entered the exam room at the academy." Sakura stared at Naruto, anger, pity, and sadness warring within her. Anger at Mizuki for what he did to her Naruto-kun. Pity for Naruto having to go through such an ordeal, and sadness at the fact that Naruto had to take a life. But the anger was quickly winning as she continued to consider all that had happened to her friend. How dare Mizuki, or anyone for that matter, try to hurt Naruto? How dare they? If he wasn't already dead, she would have beat him down herself. Naruto's status at a Jinchuriki was a shock at first, but looking back, it was the final piece she needed to figure out why everyone seemed to hate him. She scowled, as if anyone could believe that Naruto was some kind of demon in human form. He was Naruto-kun. Hinata was frozen. Several emotions frothed within her. Chiefly among them was sadness and anger. Sadness at all of the horrible things Naruto-kun had to go through, and anger at those who had did them to her Naruto-kun. Slowly, her sadness gave way to determination. No one would harm Naruto like that ever again. Ever. She didn't care that Naruto was the demon fox's Jinchuriki. He was Naruto-kun. Naruto sighed happily, finally allowing himself to relax. They didn't hate him because of his status as a Jinchuriki, and for that he was unfathomably grateful. He still wasn't sure why they didn't hate him, but he was in awe that they had not. Idly glanced up at his clock, he noted the time before freezing. Snapping his head at the clock again, he realized what time it was. Oh crap, the genin leapt up from his chair, startling the girls from their ruminations. "We have to go now. Otherwise we're going to be late for team placements." The new genins quickly sprinted towards the academy, dodging the human traffic as they rushed to their destination. Iruka limped into the classroom. He felt guilty that he hadn't been there to help Naruto though his first kill, but he had been assured by the receptionist at the front desk that someone had talked to his student. It eased the guilty somewhat. He felt his face break into a proud grin as he realized that all of his students had graduated. Wincing, he made the mental note that smiling still hurt. Noting that the last of the students had arrived, he started roll call. Once it had finished, the teacher started calling out team placements. And for Team 7, Sasuke Uchiha, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburame. Your sensei will be Kakashi Hitaki. For Team 8, Hinata Hyuga, Sakura Haruno, and Naruto Uzumaki. Your sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi. For Team 9, Iruka's voice was quickly tuned out as Naruto, Sakura, and Hinata quietly celebrated. Naruto grinned happily as he realized that he had completed another stage of his goal. Ino Yamanaka turned in her seat to taunt Sakura about her team placement, or more accurately not being placed on Sasuke-kun's team, when she froze, flushing ever so slightly. Naruto's smile seemed to light up the room, and if she was being honest with herself, the rest of him wasn't that bad to look at either. Granted, he wasn't Sasuke-kun, but he wasn't terrible to look at. Turning back around, she missed Sakura's and Hinata's eyes narrow at her blush. Ironically, neither of the girls sitting next to Naruto realized that the other was glaring just as hard at Ino as they themselves were. Soon, the team announcements were over, and the Jonin started to file in to pick up their teams. After a few teams had left, a pretty black-haired woman with red irises walked in. She scanned the room for a moment before calling out, "Team 8. Meet me in Training Ground 5 in 15 minutes. She then turned and left the room, presumably heading to the training ground herself. Doing a quick mental calculation, Naruto tilted his head as he roughly guessed how long it would take to make it to the training ground. He knew he could easily make it in 10 minutes, but he was unsure if Sakura or Hinata could move that fast. Perking up as he realized how they could all make it on time. Okay, Sakura-chan, hop on my back. Hinata-chan, I'll pick you up and carry you. I can make it to training ground 5 in about 10 minutes this way. Sakura opened her mouth to protest when a sudden thought stopped her short. What if Hinata-chan took Naruto up on his offer? Then she would be left in the dust and Hinata-chan would be all alone with Naruto-kun. Hinata's vision swam at the thought of being carried in Naruto-kun's arms. Clenching her fists, she pushed herself to not pass out. For if she did, Sakura-chan would be all alone with Naruto-kun. I'll do it, Sakura and Hinata said at once, blinking at the other in shock before glaring at each other for the briefest of seconds. Naruto, who had missed the exchange of glares, grinned happily. He loved it when one of his plans helped Sakura-chan or Hinata-chan, or even better when it helped both. Kurenai waited at the edge of training ground 5. It had only been 8 minutes since she had left the academy building. She was eager to see how fast her students were. Suddenly, she was aware of someone heading in her direction at relatively high speeds. A moment later, all of her students burst into the training ground. Or rather, Naruto burst onto the training ground and Sakura and Hinata were along for the ride. Shrugging to herself, the Jonin pushed herself off the tree she had been leaning against and moved towards her team. Well, at least she knew Naruto was fast and stronger than average now. Welcome. Kurenai's warm smile and open demeanor put her students at ease. My name is Kurenai Yuhi and I will be your Jonin sensei. Hiding her amusement as she watched her genin disengage from each other, she waited until they had settled before sitting on the ground, motioning for them to follow suit. Why don't we all share a bit about ourselves? Could you go first, Kurenai-sensei? So we know how it's done. Sakura asked, unsure of what information Kurenai wanted. Perhaps it was skill level? Or maybe grades? Or it could be, I will gladly do that. Kurenai brushed an errant lock of hair back, happy that her students weren't too afraid to ask her questions. My name is Kurenai Yuhi. My likes dumplings, genjutsu, and helping others. My dislikes are those who hurt others for fun, perverts, and those who hurt innocent people. My dream is for my team to succeed in becoming great ninjas, and I also want to start a family someday. She indicated Sakura should go next. Sakura took a deep breath before starting. My name is Sakura Haruno. My likes are my family, Naruto-kun, Hinata-chan, and books. My dislikes are stupid people who hate others, people who hurt my friends, and dumb people who can't see what's in front of them. Her hands clenched as she remembered what Naruto had told her a few hours before. Glancing down, she considered what she wanted for the future. My dream is to become a powerful kunoichi and someday start a family. Unable to help herself, she threw a confused glance at Naruto as she finished her introduction. She was saved from the strange feelings his presence invoked when Kurenai indicated that Hinata was next. My name is Hinata Hyuga, Hinata began. Her hands settled in her lap. My likes are my clan, Naruto-kun, my Byakugan, and Sakura-chan. Her eyes narrowed. My dislikes are those who hurt or belittle those I care about. Her fingers drifted together, poking one another continued. My dream is to be a successful kunoichi and one day start a family. She too sent a glance over at the oblivious Naruto. Kurenai covered her amused smile at the girl's glances and turned to Naruto expectantly. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto grinned. My likes are Sakura-chan, Hinata-chan, ramen, and training. His hands flexed. My dislikes are people who try to hurt my friends. Naruto's eyes lightened, the momentary darkness passing like a cloud on a sunny day. My dream is to become the most powerful ninja ever to protect my friends. Kurenai blinked. She had been expecting Naruto's dream to be a bit more beneficial to himself. She gave a mental shrug. It didn't matter. Perhaps his dream would change in time. Now that we have all introduced ourselves, she began, drawing the attention of her team. There is only one more thing we have to take care of. Normally a Jonin tests his prospective team to see if they are able to work together, but I can already see that you three already have good teamwork. Spreading her arms wide, she beamed at her team. So let me formally congratulate you on joining Team 8. Kurenai stretched as she walked out of the shower. It had been an interesting 3 weeks, she mused as she dried and dressed for the day. She had originally had, despite herself, a few reservations when dealing with her team, especially Naruto. She still felt ashamed that she even entertained such thoughts. She found that Naruto was a honest, hard-working, slightly naive boy who cared so much for his friends. Kurenai doubted there was a limit to how far Naruto would go for his friends. As she had started training her team, she had originally intended to slowly ease them into the more intense training. That thought hadn't even lasted a day. Kurenai smiled as she remembered the conversation she had with her team after she had explained why they were taking it slow. "What?" came Naruto's disbelieving voice. "You don't want us to train to be the best?" Kurenai blinked. That wasn't what she meant at all. "What Naruto is trying to say," Sakura explained hastily, "is that we have trained harder than this by ourselves. We should be pushed even harder by you, our sensei. We can't afford to be untrained when we go on missions." Sakura finished, satisfied that she had gotten her point across. Kurenai was brought up short by Sakura's explanation. Was she really going to be hindering their growth as shinobi? She was silent as she considered what to do. After a little while, she spoke up, her words carrying a sense of finality. "All right, I'll train you all each day to your limit. But I will not have you exceeding your limit and hurting yourselves." She looked sternly at each of her students. Sakura and Hinata nodded, content with her reasoning. Naruto looked like he wanted to protest, but then a look of insight seemed to spread across his face. He nodded his acceptance. Kurenai let a proud smile appear across her face as she thought about how much her team of genins had grown in only 3 short weeks. Sakura had already mastered several D-rank genjutsus and 1 D-rank water ninjutsu. Hinata had mastered 2 D-rank fire ninjutsu and 1 D-rank lightning jutsu. She had also improved by leaps and bounds with her bloodline. Naruto had been the greatest surprise of them all. He had the rare high affinity for wind. While Kurenai had known a few D-rank and C-rank fire, water, and lightning techniques like all Jonin, she had not known any wind techniques. Fortunately for her, Asuma Sarutobi was more than happy to help teach the young blonde several D-rank techniques. Originally Asuma had planned on only teaching Naruto one technique, but Naruto had mastered it within the day. Asuma had challenged Naruto to learn 4 more techniques within a week. Naruto had mastered them all within 6 days. Now, Asuma was currently helping her teach Naruto several more wind techniques. The entire team had also mastered several basic movement techniques. Speaking of Naruto, Kurenai once again wondered what Naruto's secret training he kept disappearing to was. He had assured them, Sakura and Hinata more than Kurenai, his personal training was perfectly safe. She had originally intended on pointing out that Naruto's version of safe and everyone else's definition of safe were completely different things. But as she caught a look at Naruto's sparkling eyes and his proud smile, she could do nothing other than remind him to stay safe. She liked to think that her words had some effect on Naruto's reckless behavior. Kurenai frowned as she remembered that these last few weeks hadn't been all perfect. The main issue of her contention was the weekly team training between Team 7 and Team 8. The first time had started out all right, with a simple introduction between teams. Once they had finished introductions, however, it took a sharp downturn for the worse. Kakashi had suggested a simple team sparring match to assess the 2 teams' level of teamwork. Not seeing the harm, she had agreed. Team 8 had practically slaughtered Team 7. While the individual members of Team 7 were skilled, they stood little chance against the all-but flawless teamwork of Team 8. The members of Team 7 had broken up as soon as the fight started. Kiba and Sasuke had rushed Naruto, who defended himself. Shino had been left all alone and was quickly picked off by the combined efforts of Sakura and Hinata. Once they had taken care of the Aburame, Kiba had quickly went down to a combination of Genjutsu and Naruto's close combat prowess. Sasuke had foolishly attempted to burn Naruto with a great fireball jutsu. Naruto had dodged out of the way, and Sasuke was quickly taken down by the 2 angry female members of Team 8. Kakashi had hoped the fight would be an eye-opener for his team to learn why teamwork was important. It instead had a very different effect. Shino had slowly opened up to Team 8, especially Naruto. He seemed to enjoy the dual team training for that reason alone. Kiba had learned to curb his recklessness in fights to a certain extent, realizing that it just had made him an easier target. Sasuke was a puzzle. On the one hand, He progressed in training faster than the other members of his team, but at the same time, he didn't do it to learn per se. Instead, he seemed to have gained a new goal in defeating Naruto and, to a lesser extent, Team 8. While Kakashi had seemed satisfied Sasuke's reasoning, Kurenai couldn't help but worry about how far Sasuke would go to defeat Naruto and Team 8. Kurenai munched on her breakfast as she considered her team. It was obvious to practically everyone, minus Naruto, that both Sakura and Hinata had feelings that stretched beyond mere friendship. However, ironically enough, it seemed that Sakura herself was oblivious to the fact that she fancied the young blonde. Kurenai suspected that Sakura's obliviousness wouldn't last much longer. Tomorrow was their first C-rank mission after all. Missions like that tended to bring things into perspective. But first, today was another dual-team training day. Kurenai sighed. May as well get this over with. Team 8 showed up to training ground 3 early, as per usual. Surprisingly, Shino was waiting for them. Shino. Naruto called out happily, "How's it going?" "It is going well," Shino answered in his normal monotone. "I am ready to start another day of training with your team." He paused for a moment and then asked Naruto hesitantly, "Could you make a few of your clones? I have an idea I wish to test out." Seeing Sakura and Hinata begin to frown, he hurriedly added, "You will not be harmed." "Only your clones." "Sure," Naruto instantly replied, happy to help Shino. The young Aburame was quickly becoming someone Naruto would consider a friend. Naruto quickly looked back at his sensei for permission to go with Shino. Seeing her nod, the two boys made their way to the far side of the field. As they walked, Naruto inquired how Shino's team was doing. "If we were a hive, it would have torn itself apart by now. Or starved to death," came Shino's blunt reply. Naruto grimaced. "That bad, huh?" "Yes. If it was allowed to have 4 genins on a team, I would request to join Team 8. Your team seems to be a productive hive," Shino replied, his monotone voice sounding slightly frustrated. "Well," Naruto scratched his head as he thought, "is there any reason why we can't have one more person on our team? It has always been 3 genins and a jonin instructor." Shino's voice sounded thoughtful. "But I can't see any reason why one more person couldn't be added to a team. It's not like we are attempting to add a second queen to the hive." "I'll ask Sakura-chan when we get back," Naruto promised. "She'll know if there is a reason why you can't have 4 genins in a team." Shino nodded as they both stopped on the far side of the training grounds. At Shino's gesture, Naruto created 5 clones. As Shino formed an insect clone, he explained the new technique he was trying to create. "You are aware of the insect clone technique, correct?" At Naruto's nod, he continued, his monotone voice becoming slightly animated. "Since our talk about creating our own new jutsus, I realized that I could make the Mushi Bunshin no Jutsu much more effective in combat." He paused as he motioned for Naruto's clone to strike his insect clone. "I realized that if I could have the insects attack the person that stuck it, the insects could instantly begin their assault." Naruto's clone punched the Mushi Bunshin directly in the chest. Immediately after the clone's fist hit, Shino's clone seemed to collapse onto Naruto's shocked clone. Naruto's clone dispelled a moment later when the several hundred bugs that had previously made up Shino's clone bit down. "Nice," Naruto congratulated. "Good job. It's a awesome technique." Shino nodded his thanks. "And what of your new ninjutsu you are creating?" Naruto glanced around quickly. "Well, I'm working on controlling the newest one. I only lost 50 clones last time I lost control of it." Shino nodded. It wasn't easy creating new techniques. Especially if you wanted it to be a surprise from your teammates, one of which could see the walls. After they finished testing Shino's new technique several more times, they spied Kakashi entering the field. They headed back towards the gathering group. As they grew nearer, Naruto heard Sakura angrily say something to either Kiba or Sasuke. A determined look crossed Naruto's face. He would find out today why Sasuke didn't like him. As soon as Naruto and Shino entered the group, Sasuke spoke up, his voice angry and determined. "I'll fight the Uzumaki today for today's individual sparring session." Before anyone could protest, Naruto spoke up. "I accept." Naruto's voice was filled with determination. Shino quickly looked between the 2 remaining members of Team 8. While he didn't really like having his chakra points blocked off, it was much better than simply being beaten into unconsciousness by Sakura. "I would like to spar Hinata-san." Shino professed, his monotone voice not giving any hints to his reasoning why he wanted to fight Hinata. I accept Shino-san's offer. Kiba gulped and muttered quietly, well shit. He knew what was going to happen. He and Sakura would fight, she would catch him off guard, and then she would beat him into the ground until he surrendered. Kiba sighed. Life wasn't fair sometimes. He really couldn't go all out against Sakura, or Hinata for that matter. He liked living, thank you very much. Kiba was certain that if he somehow seriously hurt Hinata or Sakura, even if by accident, Naruto would kill him. And he wanted to avoid dying. The fight order was randomly chosen. It would be Hinata versus Shino, Sakura versus Kiba, and finally Naruto versus Sasuke. Hinata and Shino moved to opposite ends of the sparring field. They waited for the signal to start. Hajime. Hinata immediately charged her opponent, her hands forming the seals for the fire jutsu called Blaze Spark. Shino, realizing the danger, sprinted across the field at a diagonal, outpacing the small fiery blasts from Hinata. Dodging another fire blast, he continued to sprint to the right. Suddenly, with a small pop, Hinata appeared in front of him with her hand already coated in chakra. Shino had no time to react before two of his chakra points were abruptly cut off. I surrender, he called, still slightly confused at how Hinata had suddenly appeared in front of him. Hinata smiled apologetically and poked him twice more, reopening the closed chakra points. After she opened the second point, Shino inquired, "How did you move so fast, Hinata-san?" Hinata blushed slightly and shook her head. "I didn't move fast at all, Shino-san. I simply swapped places with the kunai Naruto had dropped earlier." Ah, Shino nodded in understanding. He had wondered why Naruto hadn't picked up the kunai when he had dropped it, but he had simply dismissed it. He would not make the same mistake again. As Hinata and Shino exited the sparring area, Sakura and a reluctant Kiba entered the field. Kiba had left his ninja dog partner, Akamaru, on the sidelines, for he didn't know any techniques that didn't do serious damage. And doing serious damage to his sparring partner was something he wanted to avoid at all costs. After they reached their sides of the sparring area, the match started in earnest. Hajime. Kiba charged Sakura, attempting to catch her off guard and hopefully force a submit. As he charged, he could see Sakura quickly forming hand seals. A wall of water shot into the air between Kiba and Sakura. Kiba grinned to himself and forced more chakra into his limbs. He couldn't wait to see Sakura's face when he burst the water wall. With a mighty grunt, Kiba hurled himself through the water wall. As soon as he landed, he readied himself to attack. But Sakura was nowhere in sight. Kiba stopped and looked around in confusion. Where had she gone? Kiba sniffed the air. Suddenly, he caught Sakura's scent. It was directly behind him. As Kiba tensed to spin around, the cold steel of a kunai was pressed against his neck. He froze. "I surrender," came Kiba's voice, still terribly confused. As soon as he surrendered, he felt the kunai retract. He turned around, a quizzical look on his face. Sakura, seeing Kiba's confused look, explained how she had won. "After I formed the water wall, your line of sight on me disappeared. At that point I simply used a genjutsu to blend in with the area so you missed me when you burst through the water. It was simple to maneuver behind you at that point." Kiba nodded. While his pride was stung, he realized that his own tactics had been turned against him. He resolved to fight Naruto next time, since neither boy used weak tactics such as genjutsu to win. As he and Sakura left the field, his mind was whirling with ideas of how to prevent this from happening again. Sasuke and Naruto entered the field, each with determination blazing in their eyes, although for vastly different reasons. After making sure both fighters were ready, Kakashi started the match. Hajime. Sasuke immediately activated his Sharingan and hurled several kunai simultaneously at Naruto. As Naruto moved to dodge the kunai, the last Uchiha's hands blazed, though the hand signs for the great fireball technique. He shot the jutsu directly towards where Naruto was headed. Naruto barely dodged out of the oncoming fireball, using a handspring to gain extra distance. Naruto skidded to the side and formed a few hand signs. A gust of wind shot towards Sasuke. The black-haired Uchiha dove out of the way of the attack, but he lost sight of Naruto during his dodge. As he vaulted to his feet, he barely managed to bring his arm up to block Naruto's fist. As he spun to gain the advantage, Naruto's words almost made him stumble. Why do you not like me? Naruto asked with a curious tone. I can't think of really anything I did to make you hate me, other than beating you in a spar. Sasuke leapt back a few feet to put distance between them. Naruto's question had badly shaken him. For all this time he had assumed that Naruto disliked him as much as he disliked Naruto, but that didn't seem to be the case. For a moment, Sasuke wished he could tell Naruto how he felt sometimes. How the crushing weight of his responsibility to his clan sometimes seemed like a burden too great to bear. How he would awaken at night screaming as the scenes of the night his clan had died once again plagued him. How the village had started treating him like a prince right after his parents' death. How he had been brought up knowing that the Uchiha clan was the strongest, but that strength hadn't helped them against one of their own. But he couldn't tell Naruto these things. For he wasn't weak. It's the fact that you are a clan less looser. Sasuke snarled, his voice rising as he continued. You don't even have a clan. You're a nobody. And yet you still win against me. An Uchiha. Sasuke charged Naruto, determined to beat him. For if he couldn't beat a clan less looser like the Uzumaki, how was he supposed to ever kill his brother? As he grew near to Naruto, the blonde knocked his hand out of the way, slammed his hand into Sasuke's chest at an upwards angle, and then swept the Uchiha's legs out from under him in one smooth flow of motions. Sasuke hit the ground hard on his backside, a pained grunt escaping him. A shadow fell over him. He looked up. Naruto stood at 2 feet away from him with an understanding expression. I don't know what it's like to have a family. I never had one, so I don't know what it's like for them to be taken away. Naruto confessed, his voice having some quality that grabbed all of Sasuke's attention. But what I do know is this. Having friends is the best feeling in the world. They give you strength to defend them, and in return they're there for you. Naruto extended his hand. Would you like a friend? Sasuke stared at the offered hand. A vast part of him desperately wanted a friend, but something held him back. Suddenly the words of his hated brother, Itachi, replayed in his mind. You don't hate enough. Sasuke stood up by slowly, ignoring Naruto's offered hand. As he started leaving the field, a confused Naruto called after him, wondering why he hadn't taken Naruto's offer of friendship. You don't hate enough, came the reply from the black-haired boy. Sasuke headed off towards the empty Uchiha clan compound. Naruto's words had shaken him deeply, and he needed to be alone. The rest of the group watched the last Uchiha leave with a confused expressions. What did you say to him, Naruto? Kakashi questioned, wondering what had possibly gotten under the black-haired genin's skin. All I asked is if he wanted to a friend. Naruto replied, still confused by Sasuke's last words. What did you don't hate enough even mean? The team training quickly broke up after Sasuke left, the other members of Team 7 citing various reasons to leave. Within a few minutes, the only ones left in Training Ground 3 was Team 8. Kurenai pondered what could have caused such a reaction in Sasuke. She felt the expectant stares of her students. She mentally shrugged. She could think on the Uchiha's strange behavior later. Right now, she had students to teach. The next day Team 8 filed into the Hokage's office. The Hokage looked up with a warming smile. What can I do for you today? Hiruzen asked kindly. I would like to request a C-rank mission for my team. Kurenai requested in a formal tone, her voice cold and professional. Hiruzen sighed. He had been afraid of this. The Hokage looked Kurenai directly in the eye. Do you think that they are ready? The Hokage questioned the Jonin. Kurenai nodded. They are ready for a C-rank mission. She firmly held the Hokage gaze until he nodded. He turned and began to look through a stack of mission requests. Ah, here we are. The Hokage said in a satisfied tone, I found a good mission for your team. It's a simple bandit removal mission. Kurenai blinked in shock. While she knew that her students would have to kill eventually, she hadn't expected their first mission to be a kill mission. She sighed heavily. Kurenai paged through the mission briefing. A small village was being plagued by a small band of bandits. It was rumored that the leader of the bandits was a missing ninja, a ninja who had left his village and was declared a traitor. Overall, it seemed like an easier mission for her team. We accept. Quote, as Team 8 left the Hokage's office, Kurenai instructed her genins to meet her at the western gate in 2 hours with enough supplies to last them a week and a half. The 3 genins quickly ran off, intent on gathering everything they needed within the time allotted. 2 hours later, Kurenai walked up to the western gate. As she approached, she spied her genin sprinting in her direction. Well, Hinata and Sakura were sprinting. Kurenai suspected that Naruto had gotten sidetracked again with his sealing scrolls. Ever since she had bought a sealing scroll for Naruto, he had been attempting to alter the sealing scroll, claiming that he could make it better. While she suspected that such a feat wasn't really possible, she had learned better than to simply discount Naruto's ideas. Kurenai shrugged. Naruto would be here shortly. As Kurenai, Sakura, and Hinata waited for Naruto, Kurenai asked the girls what they had brought for the trip. Hinata had brought a small camping tent, 2 weeks of rations, 2 changes of clothing, and various supplies for camping. She had brought along a normal set of kunai and shuriken. All in all, Hinata only carried with her 3 small sealing scrolls. Sakura, by contrast, had a large spacious tent, 2 weeks of home-cooked meals for the group, 2 sets of kunai and shuriken, several changes of clothing, and large amounts of rope. When asked about the rope, Sakura had launched into a lecture about the various uses for rope. As her speech was wrapping up several minutes later, Naruto arrived. Naruto, unlike the other members of his group, had taken to bringing everything he owned along with him, minus his furniture. It was much easier to simply use sealing scrolls and bring it all along than have it misplaced by the time he returned to his apartment. To that end, he had brought 2 weeks of ramen for the group, his changes of clothing, the 3 pictures he had of his friends, and several dozen kunai and shuriken. All in all, Naruto had 2 sealing scrolls with him. Kurenai, concerned that Naruto was carrying most of his weaponry loosely in a sealing scroll instead of in a proper sealing holster, asked Naruto what he had done with the holster the kunai came with. "What do you mean?" Naruto questioned, confused at what Kurenai was referring to. "Kunai come with holsters? You didn't get one when you bought them?" Kurenai questioned, concerned that her genin had gotten taken advantage of by some unscrupulous merchant. "Huh?" Naruto replied, still confused for a moment. Then he understood in a flash of insight. "I've never bought kunai or shurikens. I've just found them on the ground, taken them home, and cleaned them up. Sometimes I've even gotten the high-quality ones," he explained. "Naruto," Kurenai said hesitantly, "why don't you buy kunai at the store?" Naruto said with a dismissive wave, "They don't like to sell me things. The prices seem to change a lot when I'm in the store. And eating at least once every day is more important anyway," he added silently. The shocked silence that followed was almost deafening. Each other member of the group was occupied with how they were reacting to the news. Kurenai almost couldn't believe that any store owner would do such a thing to a child. But that knowledge was secondary to her observation of Naruto-san as he recounted the unfair treatment. It hadn't seemed to bother him. Kurenai's eyes narrowed. This meant that this wasn't a new occurrence. Well, when she got back, she would have a little talk with the store owner. Hinata felt confused. In all her life, she had never experienced a store clerk ever give anyone a hard time. Often they would even give discounts to her father. The idea that someone would deliberately raise prices in their store for someone like Naruto-kun was almost foreign. She resolved to talk to her father when she got back. Sakura was angry. If she had been able to think logically about the situation, she would have realized that she shouldn't have been surprised by the store's treatment of her Naruto-kun. But she was surprised. As Sakura thought about the issue more, she wondered if all of the village, not just a few stupid ninja as she had previously thought, hated Naruto. If so, Sakura wondered what she could do about it. Because no one hurt Naruto-kun. Kurenai shook herself from her dark thoughts. There would be time for those later. She turned and called out to her students, breaking them from their thoughts. "It's time to go," she urged them. "It's your first mission outside of the village. I'll explain the mission as we head towards the mission's area of operation." With a shout of happiness from Naruto, Team 8 set off towards the mission. After a day of travel, Team 8 stopped to camp for the evening. After the group had set up camp and gotten a fire going, they naturally gravitated towards the fire to talk. As Naruto, Sakura, and Hinata conversed amongst themselves, they noticed that Kurenai, their sensei, wasn't talking much. In fact, she was staring into the fire with a troubled look on her face. Kurenai sighed as she stared into the campfire. She was confused, angry, and saddened. As she brooded about all of the information she had gotten today, Naruto's voice broke her out of her ruminations. "Kurenai-sensei, are you all right?" Naruto's tone had undisguised worry laced in it. Kurenai turned to her worried genins. She sighed again. She wished that they didn't have to take this mission. That they wouldn't have to lose their innocence this early. That they could remain young and happy children. Alas, it would not be the case. Do you know what mission we have been assigned? Kurenai began carefully. It is a bandit removal mission. She glanced at her genins. They seemed to be slightly confused. She sighed and looked away from her students to the fire once again. What a bandit retrieval mission means is that you track down the bandits that are causing trouble, and then you kill them. Her words hung over the group. Okay, Naruto said simply, breaking the silence after a few moments. Kurenai snapped her head to look over at him. He didn't seem to be taking the news poorly. In fact, he didn't even seem very surprised. Kurenai wondered, and not for the first time, who really was Naruto Uzumaki? Was the real Naruto a smiling child who met each day with unlimited enthusiasm? Was the real Naruto the unpredictable ninja who fought a shinobi who was his better in every way, only for the blonde to win a decisive victory? Or was it a young man who clung to his friends and would do whatever it takes to keep them safe? I should have expected this. Sakura began hesitantly, her face pale. After all ninja eventually have to kill. It's usually a genin's first or second C-rank mission that they make their first kill. She finished, seemingly taking some comfort in her knowledge. Hinata was frozen, Kurenai's words echoing in her head. She was going to have to kill. She was going to have to destroy someone else's life. They would die. As the words echoed louder and louder her skull, she began to feel lightheaded. Then a sudden thought stopped the echoes. Those ninja tried to kill Naruto-kun, didn't they? What if they tried again? Would I hesitate to stop them? Hinata shook her head at her thoughts, determination flooding her. She wouldn't be the cause of Naruto-kun getting hurt. Ever. Naruto looked at his sensei after glancing at his teammates. Kurenai-sensei, we're ready for this. This is what we trained for. His voice conveyed such conviction that it bolstered the rest of the team. Looking at their determined faces, Kurenai's heart eased to a certain extent. She smiled proudly at her students. They were the models of the perfect students. She knew that she wasn't so mature when she was their age. As they prepared to turn in for the evening, Sakura realized something important. Naruto, where is your tent? She questioned, a suspicion growing in her mind. I don't have one. Naruto dismissed. Seeing the dark look on Sakura's face, he hastened to add, but I've slept in worse conditions than this. Sakura now looked angry. Naruto's eyes widened. What did I say? He wondered frantically. But then Sakura stormed up to him and grabbed his arm, making him flinch slightly. You're sleeping in my tent. There's plenty of room for two. Sakura hadn't made 2 steps towards her tent when she replayed her words in her head, her face flushing a bright red. What I meant was we are just going to sleep. In separate sleeping bags, she hurriedly clarified, not looking at Naruto. Huh? Naruto said confused, reaching up to scratch his head. What else would we do but sleep? Nothing. Sakura quickly replied, suddenly remembering to let go of Naruto's arm. Naruto got a quick glance at Sakura's face before she turned away again. Why was her face flushed? Naruto wondered. Maybe she had gotten too much heat by being close to the fire? Naruto resolved to make sure that Sakura didn't burn herself by being too close to the fire. Hinata watched Naruto-kun disappear into Sakura-chan's tent. She felt conflicted. While part of her knew that all they would do is sleep, another part of her wanted to turn on her Byakugan and watch the tent all night. Still another part wished that she had brought a bigger tent herself. Kurenai shook her head in amusement at another instance of her team's strange relationship dynamic. She then settled in for a long night of watching over her genins. Morning seemed to come too quickly for Hinata. It seemed that she had just now fallen to sleep. She was sure it had nothing to do with the fact that Naruto was sleeping in Sakura-chan's tent. And she most certainly didn't watch the tent off and on for several hours with her Byakugan. Although, she admitted silently, Naruto did have the nicest expression when he slept. Naruto stretched as he exited Sakura-chan's tent. Sakura-chan was still sleeping at the moment. Naruto figured that he would grab a quick bite to eat before seeking out Kurenai-sensei. A serious expression crossed his face. He really needed to talk to sensei before they set out for the day. Hinata froze at the door flap of her tent. Naruto was sitting eating food in front of the fire. But more importantly, he didn't have a shirt on. Hinata slowly backed into her tent, letting the flap fall. She concentrated, her Byakugan activating. Breakfast could wait. She had something more important to watch. Kurenai yawned. It had been a boring night. A sudden rustle of leaves to her left side had her reaching for her kunai. When Naruto emerged a second later, she relaxed, casually returning the kunai to her holster. She turned to Naruto and stopped short, seeing his serious expression. Given that this was the first time she had seen a serious expression on the blonde's face, she hopped down from the tree she had been resting in to give Naruto her full attention. "Kurenai-sensei," Naruto began, "when Hinata-chan and Sakura-chan make their first kill, you need to help them though getting over it after the battle." Seeing Kurenai open her mouth, Naruto guessed her question. "I can't help them with getting over their first kill." Kurenai opened and closed her mouth several times. This wasn't what she had been expecting. "Why can't you help them though their first kill?" she questioned, remembering the Naruto had made his first kill less than a month ago. "Because I didn't need to kill Mizuki," Naruto revealed. "I could have just knocked him out. But he threatened my precious people." Naruto's monotone voice would have made Shino proud. Kurenai mentally reeled. Mizuki hadn't been killed in self-defense? Naruto, of all people, had chosen to take a life? Suddenly, Iruka's words to her made sense. It was just before she entered the classroom to meet her students for the first time. Iruka stopped her and told her something that would leave her very confused. "Kurenai-san, you're to be Naruto-san's Jonin instructor, correct?" Seeing Kurenai's nod, he continued, "Then let me give you one piece of advice. Never threaten his precious people." He had then left to go back into the classroom, leaving a confused Jonin standing in the halls. Kurenai looked over at Naruto. She smiled warmly. "Of course I'll be there for them," she reassured her student. Naruto sent her a grateful smile before he headed back towards the camp. "Naruto-kun," Kurenai called out after a sudden terrible thought crossed her mind. "Was there anyone for you after you made your first kill?" Naruto's bitter smile as he shook his head almost broke her heart. The team made good time, making it to the village shortly after midday 4 days later. They had been quickly shown to the village's leader. He had given them directions to the last place the bandit group had been seen in. Team 8 headed out. 3 hours later, Team 8 was crouched on a hill overlooking the bandit camp. Hinata's Byakugan had quickly found the bandit camp from a distance once they had moved into the correct area. After they had reached the location that the bandits had been last seen in, Hinata had activated her bloodline. After several minutes of concentrating, she located the bandit camp several miles away. Kurenai carefully observed the camp. Since it was nearing evening, the bandits were starting to settle in for the day. 2 guards were posted at each corner of the camp, facing away from its center. Most of the bandits were either by the fire in the center or clustered around the several tents that were scattered around the camp. "All right," Kurenai addressed her team in a low, quiet voice. "Here's the plan. Each of us will be taking out 2 guards. After you finish that, we will use our most powerful area of effect techniques simultaneously. Then, we will head in to finish off the survivors. The signal to use the jutsu will be the cry of a hawk." She paused, giving her students time to process the plan. "If," she continued with a firm tone, "you are in danger of being overwhelmed, spike your chakra. At that point, any team members nearby will come to assist you." She paused again. "Any questions?" Naruto looked over at her. "Wouldn't it be better if I sent one of my clones with each person?" Kurenai shook her head. "While that normally would be a fine idea, the leader of the camp is a missing nin. We don't know his capabilities, so we can't risk him feeling your chakra spike as you create the clones." Naruto nodded, disappointed. He understood why he couldn't use his clones, but he still wanted to be there to assist his team if they needed it. He resolved to be on the lookout for any chakra spikes. Kurenai motioned for her team to meet her at the edge of the hilltop. After they assembled, she pointed out what set of guards each of the team was going to take out. After everyone indicated that they understood their orders, the ninja melted into the shadows. Kurenai moved silently towards her 2 targets. With a whispered phrase, her genjutsu took hold. She watched as the 2 bandits walked closer to her location, unaware that they were moving. After they passed her location, she swiftly moved up behind them. 2 quick slashes of her kunai later left them swiftly bleeding out. She quickly put the guards out of their misery. Hinata crouched near the 2 bandit guards she was supposed to take out. She swallowed before steeling her resolve. She closed her eyes, concentrating. A moment later she opened them, her Byakugan now activated. She peered closer at the two bandits, mentally planning out how to take them out without noise and how to minimize the pain they would feel. After a few moments, Hinata moved closer. When she got within range, she rushed the guards. Before they could mutter a surprised curse, Hinata struck with precise, pinpoint accuracy. Both guards collapsed at her feet, temporarily stunned. Hinata eyed their vital pressure points. She steeled herself, and she struck. Sakura peeked out at the guards she was ordered to kill. They seemed to have been there for several hours, and periodically shuffled from side to side. A plan was slowly coming together in her mind. She carefully made the hand signs for her most powerful genjutsu, taking care that her movements wouldn't be seen. If the bandits had looked behind them, they would have seen something terribly confusing. Two more bandits, looking exactly like themselves, stood behind them. Sakura took a deep, shuddering breath. She drew her kunai. As soon as the guards looked away from her position, she charged. Her sudden movement drew the guards' attention towards her, but they didn't have time to react before she was next to them. Her kunai flashed, cutting deep into the first guard's side. As he crumpled over with a surprised curse, Sakura flung her kunai into the second guard's throat. She then frantically grabbed another kunai out of her holster as she spied the first guard about to cry out. Her panicked thrust with the kunai hit the guard in the throat, and she watched with a morbid curiosity as he gurgled wetly around the metal. Bile bubbled up in her throat as he slowly died. She purposefully avoided looking down at her blood-soaked hands, knowing that if she did, she wouldn't be able to complete the second part of the plan. And that was something she wouldn't allow. She wouldn't let down her team. Naruto watched the two guards, not impressed with their abilities. Had they been shinobi, he might have been slightly cautious. But he had hid from entire mobs of enraged ninja before, so hiding from two non-ninja bandits was ridiculously easy. Naruto flexed his hands. He slowly pulled two kunai from the holster, one for each hand. He flipped them to a reverse grip. Then he surged towards the guards. Before they could react, he sprang onto the surprised guards. Two wet thuds sounded quietly as Naruto thrust the kunai into each of the two bandits' throats. Naruto twisted the kunais, ending the bandit's life. He carefully wiped the kunais on the bandit's clothing. He then settled back and waited for the signal, staying alert for any chakra spikes. Kurenai waited, adding an extra 5 minutes to how long she figured it would take until her students killed the guards. She had initially worried that her students would become paralyzed after their first kill, but then she had realized something. She trusted her students, trusted them to get the job done. After the 5 minutes elapsed, she raised her hands, and gave the cry of a hawk. As the last notes of the bird cry faded into the air, her hands flashed through the hand signs for her most powerful fire jutsu. A large fireball, about 4 feet wide, rocketed towards the center of the camp. A second after it exploded in the center, a large wave of water rushed through the camp. The bandits barely had time to react before several blades of wind ripped through the camp. Kurenai heard the crackle of a lightning jutsu off in the distance. She smiled. Her team was going to be all right. The Jonin drew another kunai and headed into the camp, intent on finding the leader of the bandits. Naruto charged into the bandit camp, intent on finding Sakura-chan, Hinata-chan, and Kurenai-sensei. He hadn't made it more than 20 steps before a slight flash of red and orange speeding in his direction forced him to dive out of the way. As he rolled back to his feet, he spotted the bandit leader charging in his direction. The leader flashed those several hand signs and brought his hand up to his mouth. Suddenly a half-dozen fire bullets rocketed towards Naruto. Naruto hurled himself up into the air, his hands automatically coming up in a cross sign. Seconds later, a giant white smoke cloud engulfed Naruto. When it dissipated, the missing nin's mouth dropped open. 100 copies of the blonde ninja fell towards him. Desperate, he fired a veritable volley of fire bullets at the falling crowd. The sky was soon filled with white smoke and explosions of fire. As he fired the final bullet towards the last falling clone, a flash of movement in the corner his eye had him dodging back by instinct. It was the only thing that saved his life. Naruto's hand swept past the leader's face by a scant inch, the blonde's hand glowing ominously. The leader skidded to a halt 5 feet from Naruto, his hands already on the last seal for his jutsu. A wall of fire bullets screamed out the missing ninja's mouth. The missing ninja could only watch in stunned disbelief as the genin charged the wall of fire. Naruto blurred. Instinct once again saved the leader as he instinctively blocked Naruto's fist as the blonde dodged the final fire bullet. The leader suddenly grinned. He grabbed the shocked genin's arm and wrenched it upwards, jerking the arm out of Naruto's socket as the blonde was thrown into the air. As Naruto flew over the missing nin's head, Naruto snarled and his hand once again glowed ominously. He slammed the glowing hand on top the leader's head. Naruto was blasted back by the sudden explosion that followed the instant his hand made contact with the leader's head. Naruto landed in a crouch, not taking his eyes off the missing ninja. When he had first conceived of his new technique, had never imagined it would be that messy. Naruto watched the ninja's lower half slump to the ground, the blonde's technique having blasted the leader's head and upper torso apart. Naruto grunted to himself in pain as he snapped his dislocated arm back into place. Then, he created another army of clones. Most of the clones charged off to take out the bandits, but several of them started looting any of the bodies they could find, the leader included. Naruto's sensitive ears caught the sound of combat farther inside the camp. He headed off in that direction. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.